Welcome to Adventures Gone Mad, your critical look at D&D books. My name is Kyle W., and I am here with my favoritist host.
Hey everybody, it's Kyle A.
How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. I went to the gym, which is really important, and I made breakfast, which is good. I walked the dog. She's happy. So yeah, doing good.
All right, so today we are going over the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. This module was released in 1981. It has two authors, Dave J. Browne and Don Turnbull. And notably, this was released by TSR UK. This was their first module. So it's a whole different group of writers that weren't, around in they were over across the pond, as they say. This was released in 1981, so the most popular movie was Raiders of the Lost Ark, according to Box Office Mojo. The most popular album was High Fidelity by REO Speedwagon, according to Billboard 200, and video game is Pac-Man. So it has art by Jim Holloway, Dave DeLue, Harry Quinn, and Stephen D. Sullivan. And the cover art is Dave DeLue.
So to talk a little bit about the artists, Jim Holloway we've talked about before. He's pretty prolific in this module. There's a lot of his art in here. Nothing too special. There's one that I think is his that I really love, and when we get to it, I'll talk about it. So Dave DeLue, there's not a lot of information about him. There's a little bit. He's done a lot of modules, a lot of art for a lot of things, and I think he also did some comic book art as well. His style is pretty distinct. So you can really tell that that's his art. Interestingly enough, there's another artist that has another E in his name. So it's the same name, but his last name has another E in it. And he's also an artist from the Netherlands and is super prolific. But he was born in 1981, so I'm pretty sure he's not the same person. So Google searching that was really hard because it kept on bringing up this other guy's name, who's actually quite famous and prolific. So it was a little difficult.
But the module came out the year he was born, so
yeah, so not the same person.
Maybe he was try hard from birth, and he was painting on day one.
And I thought maybe it could be his son or something, but no, because it has a different E, has another E in it, so it doesn't make sense. Harry Quinn, I don't know if we've talked about him before. He's also quite prolific. He did, obviously a lot of the early TSR art as well. He's American, where I believe Dave DeLue is from the United Kingdom. Harry Quinn did a lot of comic book stuff. He's written some comic book stuff. So yeah, he's prolific as well, but not as prolific as the last guy, Stephen D. Sullivan. He's written a bunch of stuff too. So Sullivan has written a ton of comic book stuff for Marvel. He's drawn for Marvel, written for Marvel. He's actually quite prolific, and his art career spanned quite a bit. I have a hard time figuring out whose art is what in this module because
I have that same problem.
Almost nothing is signed by the artists. So, Holloway is a really pretty easy one to sort of figure out. Dave DeLue's pretty easy, but everyone else is just super difficult to figure out who might have done this art. Some of it's really, really great though, and helps you a lot.
I also noticed that when I was trying to do research on Harry Quinn, the popularity of the character Harley Quinn made that Google search harder.
Yeah, you got to really specify, D&D, this thing,
yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Minus Harley.
Yeah.
So this was remade in D&D 5th edition in the anthology of modules called Ghosts of Saltmarsh. The first adventure is the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. And that anthology gives you Saltmarsh as a city, and then it kind of ties a bunch of nautical-themed adventures around it. So before we get into it, Kyle, what is your synopsis of this module?
So the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh is people. The Sinister Secret is people. People are bad. It's people. People are the problem with everything that you're going to be dealing with in the module. Like, so the antagonist is people. Like, the people are bad. That's who you're going to be dealing with, and who is the antagonist of this whole adventure.
Yeah, that is a little bit different. We have been, like, obviously there's been bandits and, you know, humans to fight in many of the modules that we have read thus far, but most of the actual meat of the modules have been monsters. So this is different.
Like there's a dragon at the end. There's a, some kind of sinister thing. There's a froggomoth. Like there's some big creature you got to fight, and you're not going to fight a big creature at the end. You're just going to be dealing with people who, I don't know. Well, we can get into it, but basically people are the problem. So Kyle, what is your synopsis of this module?
So my synopsis of this module, I lifted directly from a quote from the module. And it's something that the author says that kind of tells you the exact thing that tells you the exact way that this module operates. And the quote is, "The DM must judge according to the circumstances."
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get into it, but a lot of this module is about moving parts and the DM like making decisions on how people act once the players are introduced into the situation.
Yeah.
All right, so we start on page 2 with the preface, and this has a preface mostly because it's the first module from TSR UK, and it kind of explains that, and it has some interestingly defensive text regarding the language that is going to be used in this.
Yeah, I struggle with this whole thing because it's sort of like, why do I need this? I mean, yeah, I guess I need this, but I don't need this much of it.
So it is interesting because this was 1981, and I think in 2025, the word that people use is monoculture. So we're more of a monoculture. So like the way that people talk in Britain and the way that people talk in the United States, obviously very different, but it is much closer now because of the internet. But I think in 1981, that distinction was much different. And I read this at first, and I was like, "Why did they put this? Why do you need this?" But then there was language that he used where I was like, either I've never heard that word and I had to look it up, or it was a different way of saying it that I would not have said. So I kind of get it.
There is for sure stuff in there like that. I just don't know if you need 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs of it. It probably could have just said, hey, there's going to be some issues with how we say things versus how you say things. So, try to carry along. It's no big deal. But, like you said, it's almost like he has to defend that he comes from the mother country of the language. So you should really be believing him and what he says about it than what we have come up with in America.
And I do understand that it might be a little bit confusing, but I doubt anyone that was reading this was like, I don't like this, and like threw the book in the trash. Like it's interesting.
I think it's a nice thing to preface with. I just don't know if you need this much explanation and also justification. And it's like, okay, whatever, it's fine, whatever.
So here's one of the paragraphs that we're talking about. It says, "Now this module is written in the English which I use and may therefore appear slightly different in flavor from the language in which the majority of its readers will be accustomed. In one sense, I make no apologies for this. It is an English module, and I would be less than representative if it did not carry something of that atmosphere. In another sense, I am aware that some readers might therefore find the reading slightly unfamiliar, and if this is in any way detracts from the enjoyment of the module, then my apologies are due."
Yeah, like he says, like, I'm not going to apologize for this, but, I'm actually apologizing for this. Like, what? Okay, sure. You're the most English person I've ever met.
So yeah, it's, it definitely, like, the preface basically says, like, I do get why they want to talk about it being the first UK TSR module, because that's like a big deal, right? It's like a whole other company. So like, it's not that, as we could tell with our previous modules, it was a lot of the same people like working on the same stuff for TSR UK. So just in light of it being new people, like they're going to have different ideas.
Yeah. And also they had done Fiend Folio before. So maybe they had gotten some feedback from Vingfolio that it was hard to understand some of the vernacular. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to have this preface. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know how much I need somebody to say that they're not going to apologize, but then apologize at the end.
Yeah, and it's like he fears that the text is too flowery or too fluid, and it's like I didn't feel that way about this.
Yeah.
But Desert of Desolation had very flowery text, and that was done by Americans. So
yeah, and I mean, I do see the flowery text in here. Sometimes I do wish he would be a little bit more succinct. But then I think that's not a factor of being English or, of it being American or not. It's just that, like, this is this person's writing style.
Right. Like, there definitely are a few individual words that he uses that are interesting. And, like, this entire thing uses British spellings, which, if you've read at this point, you're probably used to. I'm not going to be like, oh, my God, they put you in flavor. Or in color, I'm going to throw this book across the room.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not reading this anymore. Unacceptable. Pedantic.
Yeah, so it goes on, the introduction goes on to explain that this is actually two separate adventures. So it's the Haunted House and the Sea Ghost, which is a boat. And you could technically do one or the other, or you could have the players might fail at the first one. And then have to do the second one. The DM can lead them to the second one in a different way. So it just kind of talks about how this is designed that way.
And it's a first level adventure. Well, for 1 to 3. So they say 5 to 10 characters with levels 1 to 3.
And it says to pay attention to Dungeon Master Guide, page 86, and it says to basically avoid unrealistically long inner adventure training periods, which that made me look up what DMG page 86 says, which is, reading this, I am just like, it's one of those things that you read it, it's like, did people actually do this? I want to know. So essentially what this page says is you're supposed to assess the performance of each character after an adventure based on their class. So obviously if the thief refuses to pick locks, then he's not performing well. And if the cleric refuses to turn undead, that they're not performing well. And then you give each person a rating. And their ratings are ESFP, excellent, superior, fair, or poor.
The answer is absolutely not. No one ever did. No one ever gave me a grade. No one ever graded my performance.
You did S on this adventure. And it's funny, too, because it's ESFP. It's not like SABC or ABC. It's... Yeah. But anyways, it goes on to say... So this is the section that he's telling you to avoid, to just ignore in this book. This is from the Dungeon Master Guide. Award experience points normally. When each character is given his or her total, also give them an alphabetical rating, ESF or P. When a character's total experience points indicate eligibility for an advancement in level, use the alphabetic assessment to assess equal weight to the behavior of the character during each separate adventure, regardless of how many or how few experience points were gained in each. The resulting total is then divided by the number of adventures, to come up with some number from 1 to 4. This number indicates the number of weeks the character must spend in study or training before they actually gain the benefits of the new level. Be certain that all decimals are retained as each 0.145 equals a game day. What?
Okay.
And then you also have to pay money to level up too in this.
Yeah.
So I
do remember that.
Kind of for, the money thing seems like a thing that people would do, but I don't know about this whole ESFP. By the way, it's going to take you 2 weeks to actually become level 2. So you need to go in the forest and study or whatever.
So I will say that I did play in games where people gave ratings, not like an ES, or that they would usually say, hey, you did a really good job. I'm going to give you some extra XP. Hey, I think what you did with this was really clever, so I'm going to give you some of this. But I had a dungeon master who would grade you, which was super annoying, and I did not enjoy it. I don't want to be graded for my performance. I remember it,
that's so
and of
stressful.
course, because of it, I remember it specifically. I was playing a druid, and a first level druid who has 1 or 2 spells or whatever.
You're like, I did good berry, I'm done.
And there wasn't good berry at the time, so which I would have been so much better. But I had cure wounds, and that's what I memorized. And he was like, it would have been more interesting if your character had memorized control, figure out whatever what is it? It's not controlled weather. It's like I don't know. You can figure out what the weather is, and I was like, what? Like you could have figured out what was going to go on with the weather during the week. Like, okay, sure. So he didn't give me extra experience points because of that. So like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I am already doing enough work as a DM. I don't want to grade people.
Well, I have to say that there are a lot. I also play with a dungeon master who definitely would sort of penalize you for what he considered to be like suboptimal play, to the point where people feared doing anything in his game because they were afraid he was going to die. So that whole, I absolutely disagree. I agree with the author in this book and saying, please ignore those rules.
Yeah. So, understandably, because basically what he's saying is it's a level 1 through 3 adventure, and it would be kind of weird if you did the haunted house and it's like, okay, everyone sits in town for 3 weeks until you level up to level 2,
Yeah.
And by the way, because Susie got an excellent rating, she's going to level up faster than Greg, who got a poor rating, So yeah, that's the section that he's telling you to ignore.
Well, I also think he's sort of saying in the haunted house, you shouldn't get a level. Like if you're level 1, you won't get to level 2. You only get to level 2 when you get through the Sea Ghost, which is the next adventure. So I don't know. I was a little confused on that one. So I guess it kind of depends on what the characters are at. So like if they had 0 experience, but maybe you're bringing in a character that doesn't have 0 experience and has some experience, they get to level 2 and other characters don't. And then everyone's got to wait 2 weeks for that character to level up.
Yeah. I feel like everyone
annoying.
Just kind of ignored that thing.
We never played like that. We never did those things. That's insane.
It is funny that D&D through the editions is kind of like a filter in that it's like all these rules and it's like, well, what are people actually doing?
Yeah.
And that's going to make it to the next edition of the game.
Yeah. People ignored a lot of those rules.
Yeah, and that's the fun thing about D&D. You can do what works for you. All right, Kyle, so before we get to the actual meat of the adventure, that's essentially the intro. We know one of our favorite things to do is go through character rosters in modules. So I'm looking at the character roster in the back on page 29. These are all the pre-made characters that you can hand out.
Some of them, so right off the bat, I don't see any characters that have an 18 in anything.
Okay.
But there's a lot of characters that have 17s and everything. So like, okay, so since I'm like a math person, I look at the numbers and I find it fascinating that nobody has an 18, but there are a lot of 17s. So many 17s.
Yeah, I see like 118. There's a
oh yeah, yep. Lita the Holly has an 18.
The Holy
Wisdom. Oh, I'm an idiot.
So first, obviously, like previously when we read through these, it was Gary Gygax's names, and Gary Gygax has very specific ways of naming his characters. I think these characters are pretty normal as far as names go. They do sound like normal D&D characters.
Although the best character name on here is Cain the Despised. Like, I want to know what that guy's deal with.
Yeah, Cain the Despised, the half-elf male cleric magic user.
Like, I got to find out what's going on with him, because he sounds, like, way interesting. That's my first... I want to play that character.
Yeah, there's also Theodore Dobbins, which just sounds like a normal person's name.
Well, it sounds like a hobbit's name. It's definitely a very hobbit halfling name.
And he is a half... White. What is the difference between half and...
That's halfling.
Oh, halfling. Okay, that makes sense.
Halfling, yes. Yeah.
Halfling, male halfling thief.
Oh, he has an 18 dexterity, so that's good. But yeah, just looking at the scores, these are definitely not like, hey, they all rolled 3d6. There was definitely some, whatever, you rolled 46 and took the best one or something. They did something with the scores for sure.
Yeah, the other ones we've looked at actually look like they're pre-rolled, like something that someone rolled. And And it makes sense because this is intended to be kind of like an intro adventure. So if you're giving someone a pre-made character, like, and their first time at D&D, it's probably a good thing to give them like some pretty good stats. So I don't see anything. Yeah, I mean, I see a few 8s, but I don't see anything like egregiously low.
I mean, there's a 7 wisdom for somebody. 7 looks like the lowest score. So,
yeah,
and there's actually a paladin that has a 17 charisma. So, you know, they follow the rules.
So yeah, I just wanted to talk about the pre-made characters a bit.
Well, we do have to mention one thing about the pre-made characters that's very important.
Sure.
Is that every single one of them has a magic item, which is very interesting. And on the Wikipedia article, they even talk about, because I thought that was a little weird that each one of them has a magic item. You know, all first level characters.
Oh yeah, I see that. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. So, and there was somebody who, on the reviews of the modules was like, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. It's like, okay, well, don't give it to them then.
Yeah, I mean, there's the thought that like magic is supposed to be incredibly rare. Like I know Gary Gygax in multiple interviews has said like it's supposed to be incredibly rare. In my experience with older D&D, you end up with a lot of magic items, so I don't quite understand. Going through these modules, you would get at least a few every module. So you would probably have quite a bit of magic items eventually.
Yeah. But basically they all have magic items, which I don't know. I think that's kind of cool and gives them a little bit of flavor. This could be a really tough module if, especially people that haven't played D&D before. I think this could be a really tough sell, and giving them a little extra boost makes them first level characters survive a little longer. As we know, you've got a 4 hit, the halfling has 4 hit points. So,
right, that's a dagger hit, you're dead.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well.
Notably, I'm just looking at this as well, there's 2 pre-made characters that do not have magic items. So there is Lita the Holy, the human cleric, does not have magic items, and Radric the dwarf fighter thief does not have magic items. So not everyone does. And it looks like, I mean, there's a few weapons in here, but a lot of them are like potions and scrolls and stuff. And considering how this module wants you to think about the situations you're in, I think the potions and scrolls like make a little more sense than weapons.
Yeah. But kind of interesting. I mean, I think that's probably the most unique thing with the characters is they all have magic items, which is kind of, I don't know, I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It would definitely tie you in to your character a little bit more. Like, you have a magic broadsword. How did you get it? What does it look like? Is it an heirloom? Did you steal it off a corpse of a goblin? Like, where did you get it?
Yeah, where'd you get that?
Did you steal it? So back to page 3, we get to the actual town of Saltmarsh. And this module pulls something a little unexpected on me. It tells you to basically make the town of Saltmarsh.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're trying to save ink. If anything, and not have to like make the city or the town themselves. So they're sort of making you do it. So I guess that's just a way of kind of, that's the way I thought about it. I don't know. I don't like it. I think like, hey, you could pull out, and have the actual town in there. I don't think that's really asking a lot.
Yeah, I do think that this is a tutorial. Like the way I think about it is it's like an intro adventure for so the thing about an intro adventure for D&D is you need to construct an intro adventure for the players and for the dungeon master. It's
right.
Not just the dungeon master is like floating down from the heavens and is like, I am here to introduce you to this game. Like, you have to learn how to dungeon master at a certain point. Yeah. And I do think that maybe the intent of this was to walk you through making a quest city, much like the Keep on the Borderlands. Although that doesn't construct you to make it, but like designed like to Keep on the Borderlands, where it's like, on the frontier and there's a bunch of different characters that give you quests and stuff. It's kind of unfortunate to me. I wish, like, I understand having the DM draw the map and stuff, but like just give them some names or something to go with.
Yeah, I think it's just, you're sort of asking your DM to do a lot of work that, the DM in first edition D&D has a lot of work ahead of them anyway. They're going to be they always have to do the most work out of everybody. I mean, the DM always usually does, but especially first edition, they just have a lot. So having them do even more work to get all this set up is a little bit much. Obviously now with the internet, you would just like, okay, well, give me Saltmarsh, and there would be something already done. But way back then you didn't have that.
Yeah, and if you are running this now, the 5th edition book does give you the entirety of Saltmarsh. So if you were going to run this now in 2025 and you didn't want to do this yourself, you could just lift it from the Ghost of Saltmarsh anthology, because they already kind of did that in there.
Yeah, I mean, now this is no big deal. Back then, it was this set of work that I kind of disagree that they should have for a first level adventure. Like, I understand if it's like a 5th or 6th level thing and you've been playing for a while and it's like, yeah, you got to make the city, and it's like, oh, okay, that'll be fun. Whereas, like, you don't know these people and you're doing this, and you're like, ugh, that's all right.
Yeah, and the adventure is mostly concerned with the haunted house and the ship, and the majority of the people that you would end up talking to anyways would be the town council. So if you did want to skip this, you could just be like, it's a city. There's an inn, there's a tavern, and there's a town council. You could just kind of shortcut it.
You could for sure hand wave this and go, yeah, there's some stuff in the town. Especially, so there's going to be there's the other part in this module, and then there's a whole set of 2 other modules. So I would say, like, if you had a group of adventurers that are really doing that and they're really, you're campaigning, yeah, you should probably actually make the town. But, if you have a bunch of goof-offs who are like, yeah, we're never going to play with you again, then, good thing you didn't actually spend a bunch of time, like, making Saltmarsh.
Yeah, so it basically, it tells you to design the town, and it gives you a list of 5 things that it says, like, at minimum you should do this. Which is, you need the town council, so you need to name all the members, determine their occupations, etc.
Like, do you? Okay.
Yeah. Sure. And then draw a map of the town, so you have, like, something physical. And it says, draw up a tariff for the accommodation and food.
Oh, yeah, that's the English word that we're like, what?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about tariffs right now in the U.S., but we don't use that's not the same way that we're using that word. Words could be different things, but I was like, it says, like, a tariff, a list of expenditures. So I think the author knew, like, Americans don't use that word that way.
Yeah.
And then just basically, like, decide where the places of worship are in the town and what deities are worshipped there.
And it's all in Greyhawk.
Yes, it does give you a kind of guideline. So it does say it's in Greyhawk. And doesn't it? Yeah, so it says, doesn't it compare it to, like, modern day? Yeah, so it says, I like this. In general, be guided by any small South Coast English fishing town in the 14th century and with population of around 2,000. Like, that gives you plenty of information about, like, what kind of city that we're looking at. You know, it's not like a giant capital, but it's not a small town. It's 2,000 people, and it's primarily around fishing.
I mean, I think we can all sort of figure that out no matter where you live. Like, oh, it's a coastal town with a thing. I mean, I was just in France last year, and I'll just model it after this.
And then kind of here, it gives you the legend. So 4 miles east of Saltmarsh, there is the residence of an alchemist or magician that is rumored to be close to the town, and it's a dilapidated, long abandoned house, and people don't go there for many reasons. Those reasons being that it's creepy.
Yeah, things have happened there that are scary.
It is believed to be haunted. It says that at some point the players should find the person that they say is an aged poacher who will confess to having wandered into the back door of the house, trying to look for food, and he will be that he went to descend into the stairs and he heard ghastly shrieks and piercing wails, and he ran frightened. And that's kind of the adventure hook right there. That specific character, basically, it wants your characters to, like, show up to this town and walk around and then eventually meet this person and get this adventure hook.
Yeah, however you want to get that adventure hook, it's nice because it sort of lets you feel out your players and, like, figure out kind of what's going on there, and then how you want to do it. I mean, on some level, for a new DM, that might be a little tough. For somebody who's a little bit experienced, it's going to be pretty easy to do.
And it is interesting that these early modules all want, like, a really organic start. Like, this one and Keep on the Borderlands is like, yeah, you go to the keep and you walk around and talk to people. It's not like you show up to the Caves of Chaos and you're there. Like there's a little meet and greet going on before you get to the meat of the adventure. So they want, at least you could tell in the design, they want the adventures to be like organic, start organic.
Yeah, I mean, we're still telling a story, so they still want to tell a story. So that's good. I guess in some ways to think about, like, that is how, because that's how they've started all of these, and so many people have looked at these adventures and they became, sort of for video games and for novels, whatever, having that sort of organic start is, I was just thinking in video games where it's like, you start in a town in some place and you just start going and talking to people, and then suddenly someone gives you a quest to go do a thing. It's very much the feel of this.
All right. So on page 4, it spoils the whole adventure, Kyle, and it gives it away. Obviously, only the DM should be reading this, so it's not really a spoiler. But what is the secret of the haunted house?
It's people.
It's people. It was people the whole time.
It's people. It's people the whole time. It's a guy it's an illusionist with magic mouth. That's it. That's why the house is haunted, because somebody wants to. That is part of the Sinister Secret. Is that
the Sinister Secret is that there are no ghosts. It is just smugglers who want people to stay away from the house, so they have convinced everyone that it's haunted.
Yep, that's right. Which is pretty cool, actually. I mean, I do like that.
It's very creative. Using a magic mouth spell like that makes the mechanics of the game link really well to the world, and I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, I know early D&D was really into like, okay, well, if you could just communicate with a sending spell, then you could just pay someone to send a message. Well, what is the world like where you could send instant messages to people with magic? Like that would change everything, right? And this is like that type of thinking, but applied to like a spell that I never think about. I have played ungodly amount of D&D, thousands of hours. I have never cast a magic mouth spell ever. The other thing this adventure points out, it says this module and the other 2 in the series are designed for thinking players. So tackle the adventures imaginatively and thoughtfully, and don't just boot down the door and stab everybody. Because if you did do that, you will not progress in this adventure.
Yeah, I think things will stop, and then you'll be playing the other adventure in a poor way. I'm actually sort of interested to see what the other modules are like, just because I'd like to see how they're all set up. I will say this is a part of the module where I was sort of like, it would be a little nicer if he was a little more succinct in his language. There's a whole page of the setup, and I don't know if you need this much setup. I don't know. I'm a little bit like, it could be a little more succinct.
You definitely need the first part about the haunted house and what the actual secret is.
Yep.
I mean, the part where like the players, you should encourage the players to like be thoughtful of this adventure is a nice thing for the DM, because other adventures at this time were not like that. So it's nice that they're upfront about it. And then the other note about basically it says the smugglers are human, like they are intelligent and organized. So it's not like running goblins. Like they will think through, they will try to set up traps, think through situations, warn other people of what's going on, etc.
Yeah, they will all come to each other's aid. Like, they'll sound the alarm and everyone will go and do this. I mean, there's a little bit of that. There's also, he does talk about the assassin. So there's a little bit of intrigue because obviously people in Saltmarsh are benefiting from the smugglers. So, they hire somebody to help thwart the players with an assassin, which I think is pretty cool. But I don't think you just need to say that, and that's it. I don't know. It's fine. It doesn't really detract that necessarily from the module. I was just sort of getting a little bit lost in the weeds reading all of this and going like, why do I need to know all of this? But I mean, I also know that I'm a fairly experienced game player of this game. So Yeah. So it's fine. I just was like, oh, it'd be nice if he was just a little more succinct about what he's trying to get you to understand.
I do want to say I also just really like this premise. Like, this is a really cool idea.
Absolutely.
Like, I love it.
I don't want to crap all over the idea just because of like my problem with it, but no, this is great. Like,
yeah, the idea of like a haunted house that's actually an illusionist that's using it, and it's not like he actually has a motivation behind what he's doing. It's not like, oh, I am an evil illusionist and I'm just messing with people. No, it's like he wants to have people think this house is haunted so that they leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, the motivations are key. Like, it totally makes sense. And the really fun part is that the characters are going to be expecting to see undead and to see all of these, like, you know, ghosts and stuff like that. And then they're not going to find ghosts. So, you know, there's this whole thing of them, you know, oh, we got to make sure our turn undead's here. And we're doing this. And, like,
yeah, we need a cleric.
We're creeping around trying to, like, jump scare them. And the jump scare is going to be, you know, a human being.
A dagger in the back.
A dagger in the back, actually, yeah.
So go on to part 1, which starts in earnest on page 5. The art on the top of the page is presumably by Harry Quinn. It looks like that's his signature on the left.
Just kiss. Very good.
I love it. It's just this like creepy, it's like the gate's half open and the wall is fallen down, and it's just this creepy, dilapidated looking haunted house, essentially. Like, it definitely it looks like, you know, like from Resident Evil or something. like
yeah, you look like you don't want to go here. This is not a place you want to be at.
Yeah, you will 100% be attacked by a zombie here. So yeah, I love that art. Great. So it gives you a preamble, and it basically this is a little different than we've seen in other adventures. It essentially says, like, here is steps, you know, 1 through 6 of like how you should set up this adventure. So after you've created Saltmarsh, this is like how the players interact with it. It essentially says you have the party meet at Saltmarsh due to some rumors, and then you have them walk around the town, and then they stay at the inn, and then the part that is really weird to me, I'm just going to read this. Let them stay in town, vainly pursuing information and spending their money for a day or two before you arrange for them to hear the legend of the house. So it's kind of like have the players walk around aimlessly. It's like another example of the adventure being hidden from the PCs.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm not sure why you need to do all of that, but, you know, I guess you're trying to set up a certain amount of drama. I don't know, maybe tension. You're trying to add some tension. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's just these early modules want the players to think, like to them, it feels more natural if they don't feel like the main characters. And I think now in D&D, it's like you are the main character. Yeah. Like that's a little bit of a difference. Like I think the older modules, they want you to feel like you are one of many, especially Greyhawk, which is like, you know, adventuring was like a profession in the Greyhawk setting. Like they want you to feel like you are part of this world and not necessarily like the focal point of it. Whereas like modern D&D is like, yeah, you have awesome superpowers and you're the main character.
Yeah, exactly.
And that might have just been adapted by the way people ended up playing the game. Because I'm sure a lot of people just skipped the section D about wandering around and kind of just gave the adventure at some point. So speaking of British words, we did run it. I did. So here's a quote from this. Once they've decided to visit the house, have the innkeeper introduce them to a prominent member of the town council so that this august body will be aware of the immediate attempt to stamp out the local menace. So I read that and I was like, august body? What?
I've actually heard that term before and I knew it was a thing, so...
Yeah, so I don't know if this is British usage, but an august body, so august means marked by majestic dignity or grandeur. So I've personally never heard that word used that way, but so I was wondering if that was a British thing and if you've heard that before.
It's definitely British. I mean, okay. You know, it's something that I've read it on probably a British novel of some sort.
Yeah, so it does note in what the last step, it essentially says there's going to be a person in Saltmarsh that is the person receiving the smuggled gear that is coming to this haunted house, and they're going to hear about the players going because they know the secret of Saltmarsh, that the house is smugglers. And then they are the ones who will set up the assassin that the players will run into eventually.
So if you think about it, like I think I like how this is thought out. Of there's smugglers there. There's someone benefiting from the smuggling. The smugglers are making money, and there's somebody who's benefiting from that. And I obviously don't want the characters to succeed, so they bring somebody. So I also want to mention something else that's sort of interesting to me about this is that they're talking about these smugglers and like they're also sort of like bad, but then I also think like, well, they're just trying to like make a living. They're just trying to like, it's capitalism. They're trying to make some way in which they make money, and what they're smuggling in and smuggling out and all of that stuff. So, it's sort of like, are the smugglers really bad? There's a whole thing that I think is interesting in here, where player characters could be looking at this and going like, well, wait a second, like they're just trying to make a living. Maybe they could figure out a way of doing this without having to smuggle things and be violent. Like they could just become merchants.
Yeah, I have a note on that later that I think, the DM might need to make them seem like a little more evil. Because when I was first reading this, I was like, oh, they're smuggling like drugs and bad things. And then you get there and it's like, yeah, it's just like silk they don't want to pay taxes on. And it's like, who cares?
Yeah. It's actually sort of very British in a way, because it's like, well, they're just trying not to pay taxes on things, normal everyday goods, It's like, well, we're just smuggling these in so we don't have to pay a sales tax. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, that makes the reveal like less interesting to me. So I guess I didn't think about it from a moral quandary point of view. So I guess like maybe the lawful characters might fight with the chaotic characters of the party about that if you want like party tension. But I do have a note in my notes later of like maybe you should change what they're actually smuggling. Yeah,
or at least they could be smuggling the silks and all that other stuff, but they're also smuggling in like drugs or I don't know, something bad, like I don't know, magical items that turn children into monsters. I don't know, but if you don't want to do that, you could, and then there's this interesting moral dilemma of like, well, is what they're really doing bad? And that could be a whole, and he doesn't really talk about that in here, but you could add that element in, which could be really interesting.
I think that type of moral quandary is something that came up in later D&D. I don't think this version of D&D is interested in that at all, from what I can tell. Like
smuggling bad, kill smugglers. Smugglers kill them bad.
Yeah, I mean, we've read, of all the adventures that we have read thus far, I don't think many of them have had interesting moral questions. And specifically, like the Tracy Hickman adventures we read, he wasn't interested in that. Like he was very interested in like good versus evil stories.
Well, and he's very upfront about that too. Like he's not interested in sort of having that moral dilemma. But you could, in fact, introduce that into this module, because it is something I thought about. Of like, wait, what are they? They're only smuggling like goods. Like, what's the big deal?
Who cares?
We're not getting our taxes. We better kill them. Like, really?
Yeah, they're not smuggling things people care about, like PlayStation 5 and
I guess it's also a very American point of view, right? Because it's like, oh, not paying taxes. That's a very trying to, not get away with like not paying taxes is a very American.
Yeah, you're supposed to do that. That's the thing you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to avoid taxes at all costs.
Right. It's very American.
So we start describing the actual house, the outside of the house, which I don't know if we need to go super into. Just imagine a creepy Resident Evil mansion.
Yeah, my favorite part of that whole, it's quite a lot of exposition about it, but my favorite part is the poisonous snake. So it's like this little opportunity for a jump scare and a little bit of tension of like, oh, we're searching the well, and then we get attacked by a poisonous snake. That's not that poisonous. It's not too bad.
Yeah, and it actually, I think they kind of nerf the poison a little bit. Like, it just knocks you out instead of killing you. Which, like, obviously, I think the author was like, well, that's lame that you spent this entire time coming up to this well and then you get bit by a snake and die.
Yeah. It would be kind of horrible. But, it definitely adds to tension, which I kind of like that piece a lot.
All right, so the Wandering Monster table is pretty interesting because you would expect it to have ghosts and zombies and stuff on it, but it doesn't because this is not haunted.
Yep.
So the Wandering Monsters here are 4 goblins, which are they're just a small independent like band of goblins just looking for stuff. They're not They have
Yeah,
nothing to do with this adventure.
There's literally some wandering goblins who wandered into this space and said, like, hey, maybe there's some food here or something.
Yeah, they are actual wandering monsters.
Yeah, they really are.
There's 2 giant rats, a giant weasel, and 6 giant ants, because it's early D&D. You need giant insects.
My question about the weasel is, do weasels suck blood? Are weasels vampires? Like, what is going on?
This one will, so this one, it describes it as a vicious creature that will attack in all circumstances. It will bite its victim and not release its jaws, but instead sucks blood at the rate of 2 to 12 hit points per round.
Yeah, which these are first level characters.
It's very funny because it says, like, suck blood at the rate, and HP is, like, an abstracted thing. So telling you it sucks blood at the rate of an abstracted thing is really funny to me, because it makes me think, like, okay, this halfling in the back of the book has 4 HP to start with. So the giant weasel sucks 2 to 12 HP. So he sucks, like, around half of a halfling's worth of blood, or 4 times.
Well, the first attack, like, if it hits, it does 2d12 damage. And then it just keeps, if you're not dead, it just keeps sucking on you for another 2 to 12 points. Like, this weasel is dynamite. Literally, this is Monty Python and the Holy Grail is the rabbit. Like,
yeah, also, is this a Monty Python reference again?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well, the rabbit didn't suck blood, but it was devastating.
But yes, it's just funny that it doesn't even say anything about it being, like, a special. It just says it's a giant weasel that sucks your blood. So
yeah, and like, do weasels normally suck blood? I don't think they do.
I mean, they eat things, but just like any other thing. But yeah. The giant weasel, when you're reading through this, it's like, oh, okay, that's going to be a memorable encounter for whoever runs into that.
Yeah, if you get that wandering weasel, like, that's going to be very interesting. Like, it killed half the party.
So we start getting into the actual haunted house itself. Room number 1 is the entrance hall. It describes it. The door opens into a musty, dirty entrance hall. And one thing that it notes is that there's two or three paragraphs under the actual description of the room where it says, careful examination by a ranger, 10% chance per experience level, or any other class that's 5% per experience level, will reveal that there's some tracks that you can, like, human tracks that you could follow. And then there's a 50% chance after that of losing the track. And this is another example of, like, there's no mechanics for this type of interaction in D&D, so they waste a bunch of space on trying to make something up.
Yeah, creating this mechanics for somebody to find out that there's not ghosts in here. I don't know. It's one of those. It's very interesting. I think the whole haunted house is figuring out that it's not really haunted.
Yeah, it's just interesting when the game has the mechanical language to say something, how much space it can save. Because for sure. There's multiple paragraphs, and in 5th edition, as an example, it would say DC 14 perception check to follow the tracks. That's
or
like one
survival.
sentence.
Survival.
Yeah. That's like one sentence, and this is 2 paragraphs. So it's just, like, interesting that the mechanical, it's very obvious to me that the rules play more, like, the mechanical language that the rules give you really changes how you write everything around the game.
Yeah, it is very interesting that, like, yes, you're right. It's like 3 paragraphs of how to track something. It's just like, okay, just make a check and you're good.
Yeah, so there's the stairs, it creaks ominously as you go up it, and there's a specific floorboard that is rotten, and if any party member steps on it, you will fall through it and take 1d6 points of damage, which might kill one of those characters.
Yep.
All right, going on to the next page, page 7, it just describes some more rooms. One that's notable is the library. There are 14 books in here. It gives you some of the books. 3 of them are The Magical Properties of Gemstones by Mage Tenzer, The Magical Properties of Herbs and Flowers by Mage Tenzer, and The Metaphysics of Mathematics by Mage Nestle.
Which are all, Gary Gygaxian.
Yeah, so Tenzer is actually Gary Gygax's I actually had to look this up because I couldn't remember which family member it was. But Tenzer is played by Gary Gygax's son Ernie.
Okay.
And Tenzer is an anagram of Ernest.
Right.
And it's one of the first 2 characters ever created for D&D. It was created by him when they were like testing the game. This is according to the Forgotten Realms wiki. Nestle, the spells were named after Mike Nestle, a game designer and the owner of Pariah Press, publisher of the Whispering Vault horror TTRPG. So it's named after like an actual person.
Oh, okay. I figured.
Yeah, with all these early characters, it's usually like someone's character or an anagram of something or some wordplay. There's a hint here. Inside the 3rd volume, so I think the Metaphysics of Mathematics, there is a sheet of parchment that is like torn out from a larger sheet, and it says there's some handwritten text, and most of it is spoiled, but the only thing you could read is the word beyond skeleton.
Which is foreshadowing.
Yeah, which is a hint for later. One of the notable areas here, Area 4, is Living Area 1. There is a magic mouth spell that is placed so it's triggered anytime someone comes within 5 feet of the trapdoor that is like a secret door. And it comes from the ceiling above, and it says, "Welcome, fools, welcome to your deaths," followed by a prolonged burst of insane and fiendish laughter.
And then you can make a fear spell out of it so that people run away, or you can just not do that. I would actually opt not to have it, probably not have it do a fear spell, but it would kind of depend on the party.
Yeah, I think it would be a little weird to do the fear spell. I could see you doing that because like you could say the illusionist put like a fear spell on it or something, but I kind of like the idea that it the PCs are like somewhat special and that this doesn't really work on them.
Yeah.
They're not like a drunk commoner looking for, table scraps in this abandoned abandoned mansion. The other thing that I like about this, it doesn't specifically say this, but I think that this should be true, is that it triggers anytime someone's within 5 feet of the trap door. So a smart party is going to immediately be like, okay, I walk away from this corner and walk back, and then the same exact sound will trigger. And then that will immediately tell you something is going on.
Yeah, something is not right. I saw something where, so part of this is that there is a secret door that goes down into the cellar, which is sort of where everything's going on. And they said, yeah, my party of adventurers found the secret door and immediately went downstairs. And it was like, okay, yeah, that kind of sucks because if you do that, then you miss a lot of what was going on upstairs, including the assassin.
Yeah, I guess that's the risk of adding players to something like this. You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if you're DMing this, you'd have to think about how you want to handle the magic mouth triggering multiple times. I personally kind of like that the players can use that as a way to figure out something is weird. I just knowing my players, I feel like they would figure that out instantly. But this is probably like a pretty novel idea in 1981. So
right.
So because the players might not have any reason to be suspicious up until this point, unless they found the tracks. Then that might be suspicion as well. All these other rooms are very empty. I don't think, other than that ring of protection.
There's a ring of protection with a large spider that you have to deal with, and then, there's the kitchen has centipedes.
Yeah, so there's 3 other living areas that are completely empty. The dining room has nothing. There's a withdrawing room. Is that like a British word? Have you ever heard that before?
Yes, I have not heard that before. I don't know what a withdrawing room is, although it sounds like something that's where you withdraw to because your lady has fainted and you need to put her into the withdrawing room.
Maybe. Yeah. I've never heard that before. I need a withdrawing room at all times.
Oh, well, so maybe you know about this and maybe you don't, but in like Victorian times, they used to put women in corsets, right? Like big, massive corsets, and they actually couldn't breathe very well. So fainting was an actual thing. So the whole thing about how women faint all the time, that's the whole thing from Victorian England, because they would put people, or in Europe, because they would put women in corsets to have this, figure or whatever, and they couldn't breathe. So like something would happen and it sort of exercise, and suddenly this woman is fainting because she's blacking out. She can't get enough oxygen into her lungs. So that's where you would put the withdrawing room, because women, that's why, it's also the piece about how women are so fragile. And it's because, well, yeah, if you're sewn into a corset where you can't breathe and someone scares you, or, you get excited, or you like walk really fast, you might faint.
Wow, yeah. And in the withdrawing room, there's a ring of protection.
Yeah, ring of protection.
And a large spider.
Yeah.
So
it's like a little jump scare things in each one of these rooms. Or some of these rooms have like a little jump scare. Because you can imagine your party sort of wandering around these rooms and like, oh, what's in this one? What's in this one? And then suddenly like, there's a spider. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so more giant insects. The kitchen in room number 9, the kitchen has 5 giant centipedes. Centipedes are really gross, so I imagine if I saw a giant centipede, I would hate it.
They only have 1 hit point.
They have poison.
It's
a plus,
for 1 to 4
plus
days.
4 to the save. Or self. But that's, save, you want to roll low. So it's actually harder to save against? Is that right? Am I remembering that wrong?
I think it's supposed to be easy to save.
Okay.
So like you get, I can't remember how it works. But I think you would get a bonus to save. Like it'd be easier to save.
Okay. Future Kyle, how exactly does saves work in this version of the game?
Stop time.
A saving throw requires the player to roll equal to or higher than the number for the saving throw located in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 79. The higher the roll, the better. So adding plus 4 to the roll to this makes it easier to save than it normally would be.
Time begins to move.
Then we go to the scullery, which has another magic mouth.
Yeah, so it's on the stairs, and it will trigger anytime someone treads to the top step, and they will hear hideous screams. And this also says, hey, maybe you might want to treat this as a fear spell as well. These other bedrooms have like nothing in them, so I didn't write anything down. Like the rooms say, there is nothing of value in this room.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Which is a very common thing in old, like modern modules don't do that. They do that sometimes, but not as much as these old modules do. Which is fine. I get that you don't need like a monster and treasure in every room. I'm thinking of just, the bedrooms are empty, and then the assassin is like...
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a yellow mold, which, okay, you got to deal with that. And then you got to deal with 2 large spiders. So again, it's like these little jump scare things.
Yeah, but no ghosts or...
Right, no ghosts, no undead. But then, when you get to the 15th bedroom, which, there's a lot of bedrooms, you get to what you really wanted your players to deal with.
Yeah, so you flip the page and you have art of a man bound and gagged in a room. And we find out that this prisoner is called Ned Shakeshaft, which is that supposed to be like making fun of William Shakespeare? Is that the joke?
I don't know.
Anyways, now that I said it out loud, it made me think that. But anyways, the prisoner is Ned Shakeshaft. He's a 3rd level assassin, although he will announce himself as a 2nd level thief if questioned.
Right, because normally when you're a character, you go like, oh yeah, I'm a 2nd level elf or whatever.
Yeah. I'm a 5th level Red Hat administrator.
Exactly. I'm a 6th level Oracle database administrator, but I've only a 4th level SQL Server database administrator.
I multi-classed into, but yeah, this is the assassin who's been planted by the person who is receiving these smuggled goods. And the idea is the assassin is going to say he's a thief and offer to help the party and then backstab them. So here's your requisite character that betrays the party.
Yeah. But, it's nice that it's nice and plain. Okay, you find him. Yeah, it's cool because he's tied up. He's been tied up there by the merchant to look like he's, just sort of wandered in. It's pretty cool. I sort of like the way this one's done.
Yeah, as far as all of the party betrayals that I make fun of, this is a good one.
Yeah.
This is a good use of that mechanic, I think.
I think so too.
It does give you a little bit of his story, which is nice because then the DM is it's easier to roleplay him if you know what fake story he's going to give.
Yeah.
Whereas other modules will just be they will say this. This actually gives you the whole story where he says that he entered from a specific city and that he was looking for a place to sleep and that he was ambushed.
Right.
and he basically offers to join you. It also does say that he doesn't really have a way to reach the smugglers. Like, he knows how to contact them, but the leader of the smugglers, he like initiates the meetings, so he doesn't really have like a way to get to the smugglers if he needs to.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like there to figure, like, strike whatever it's best. And also, part of his job too is to figure out if the party figures out about the smugglers, because I guess the party theoretically could come here and be like, "Oh, we didn't find anything," and leave. And if that's the point, then Ned probably wouldn't backstab you. He would just report back to his employer what happened. There is some interesting hints here as well. He cannot speak thieves' cant, so that's like immediately a way to suss him out as not a thief.
Oh, he asks for a dagger, and then if you provide him with a dagger, he'll switch it out for this envenomed dagger, because it's more of an assassin's thing. And then if you don't give him a dagger, he'll go find it anyway, but he'll try to hide it.
Yeah, so he'll ask for a dagger, and then he has his own stashed somewhere in the room.
Yeah, to the fireplace.
I wonder how many parties just walked in this room and just killed Ned.
That is a good question.
So yeah, Ned is a pretty interesting character. There's some more rooms here. There's a bedroom, a box room, a landing, and the attic.
Yeah, the attic is interesting.
Yeah, so the bedroom, box room, and landing, there's some like random gold, but mostly nothing in there. The most notable thing is number 17, the box room. Ned's actual clothes. There's a bundle of clothes which contain some personal effects and some clothes, and that's like Ned's actual clothes.
Yeah, I mean, and he can, Ned can point at, oh my gosh, my clothes. That's where they've stored my clothes.
Yeah, but there's nothing incriminating in there that would incriminate him otherwise. So, so the attic is the attic is filled with sturges.
More blood sucking.
Yeah, more blood sucking. We've had to have had sturges in our adventures already, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so for those unaware, sturges are like giant mosquito things that attach to you and suck your blood.
Yeah.
It also says they attack as if they had 4 Note that each sturge attacks as if it had 4 HD. So they're pretty serious sturges, considering you're like level 1 at this point. And they are hiding a ring of protection +1 in their nest. So that's basically that. That's. Oh, we accidentally skipped past a room that we should talk about, Kyle. Room number 14.
Yeah, we were both like, oh wait, isn't this the super important room that we're just like, oh yeah, all the bedrooms are the same except for these two.
Yeah, so I cut it out, but we were talking about, we got to the cellar, and we were like, wait a second, what about this room? So back on page 9, room 14 is a very important room. It's the bedroom. So this room is where the tracks that the ranger, or, you could do the percentile die earlier, this is where the tracks actually lead. And it's because, like, the positioning of this room and the topography of the cliff gives this room the best view of the sea from any part of the house. And this is the room that the smugglers use to signal their colleagues out on the sea.
And that's important. So, yeah, because that's how this whole thing happens. Yeah, and it'll also be it'll also be very important later.
And it says, careful examination of this window area will give small clues to this fact. There's fresh scratches on the sill where the lantern has been placed, scuffing on the floor, dust immediately by the window, and so forth.
And you do need to go into the room and look, and they have to say, hey, the characters are going to the room. We're going to look around in this room. I mean, and I think, kind of like how we skipped it, part of this whole thing is like, oh, if you don't know that's where the tracks lead and everything, you could just go through this room and go like, oh yeah, it's just another bedroom. And they're like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, like here's the description of the room. It says, another dirty, decaying bedroom without furniture. From the doorway, the floor in here does not look particularly safe. Some floorboards are missing while others appear to have suffered partial collapse. So your players are like going to look in there and be like, that's another empty room. Not only that, like it looks actually dangerous to walk in there. Like we need to be careful.
Yeah.
And that will become more important for the second part of the adventure, but that's probably easily missable. If your players do find that, it will make the second part of the adventure much easier. All right, back to page number 10. We're in the cellar and cavern area. So this is like where the actual you're going to start running into the actual smugglers in this area. But first, the wine cellar. In the center of this room lies a human corpse clad in plate mail. A long sword lies by the corpse's right hand, and a large shield lies across its legs. In this corpse is a colony of 18 rot grubs.
Yeah, yay!
Which is disgusting.
We've talked about those things before. They're little worms that burrow into your skin and then go to your heart and kill you. So we're first level, remember. These are first level characters.
Yeah, 18 is way more than enough to kill everybody in this party. But essentially, the corpse is infested, and I think unless they mess with the corpse, they're not going to have to deal with the rot grubs. However, the corpse is wearing plate mail +1.
Yeah, which everybody wants.
Which, yeah, not only does everybody want it, but like plate mail is just normal plate mail is very expensive at this time. Like,
no, remember we figured out it's not as expensive,
right.
But plate mail +1
thing.
is expensive.
Yeah, never mind. That's more than 5th. Never mind. I'm
yeah. In 5th edition, it's really expensive. In this edition, it's not that expensive.
Yeah, your players might not have plate mail at this point, depending on they might have had a low gold roll or something.
Yeah, they might have plate mail. They probably don't because they're first level. But by second level, most characters have plate mail. And then, but plate mail +1, hey, it's a magic item. So
yeah, so this is kind of like a risk reward thing. If you could deal with the grubs, which is probably not going to be that hard once you find out. You could burn the corpse. You can whatever. Like, it's probably not going to be hard to deal with the actual rock grubs if you know that they're there. But yeah, that's
that first person, like they're going to have it rough.
Yeah, the first person that figures that out is going to have a bad time.
And I think Cure Disease is a second level spell. I don't remember.
Future Kyle, what level is Cure Disease?
Stop time.
Cure Disease is a level 3 cleric spell. A cleric of level 5 is able to cast level 3 spells.
Time begins to move.
All right, thanks. It also says the smugglers have found this body and are kind of leaving it as... I don't know if they know about the rot grubs, but they're leaving it as like a trap to deter further exploration.
Right. And, you could go here and stop because there's no doors after this. So the cellar is just a cellar and you're like, oh, it's just a cellar. But, obviously there's something else here. There's a secret door. So you could go down here, see this corpse, deal with the rot grubs, and go like, well, forget this place and then leave and not search for secret rooms.
And this is the corpse of a fighting man who has been here for about 3 weeks. So it's a fairly new situation.
Yeah.
But there's more tracks here, and if you are successful in following them, then you will find the secret door at the south wall. And this is when you will start dealing with smugglers. So it goes 21 is the cellar, and it does give you it basically kind of stops the flow of the writing where it's just like, hey, in this room is this. In the cellar, it says, this is the area where it's like important for the DM to remember where the smugglers are at because they may not be in a specific room. They might move around because you're dealing with like intelligent people and not monsters. So it wants you to make a note of like where everything is, and it just gives you like a paragraph saying like, the smugglers might not notice if the players sneak in, but if they're loud, they might notice and go alert people, or they might try to set up a trap. Like, you need to pay attention to where the smugglers are as the DM.
Yeah, because there's a chance that like there's a smuggler that's actually in room 20, so it's in the wine cellar, because that's where you end up going, where the guy with the plate mail is. So there might be a smuggler in there. If you've been silent the entire time, or maybe you just went right down to there, you could just, oh my gosh, there's a smuggler right there who's opening the secret door. Because there's a picture of it in the module. So that could be the case. So you sort of have to like figure out like how noisy have the characters been upstairs and all of that kind of stuff.
And it actually, like, the text kind of changes a little bit in that it starts describing the rooms differently. So it says, You have entered a room which is so unlike anything else you have seen in the house that for a moment you pause, somewhat taken aback. The illumination here is good since several lighted torches are held by shoulder-high brackets around the walls. This was obviously a cellar, but equally obvious it is now used for an entirely different purpose. Your first impression is this is the living quarters for about 10 people. So that's like immediately something's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, your players like should probably know by this point, but I guess you could just go directly to the cellar and find the secret door. You never know.
Which, apparently someone did. So, when they were running this.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were saying earlier that they just went directly to the cellar.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that for that group.
And I guess we should also point out, because this is really important, that the back of the book has all of the smugglers. So there's 8 of them, and obviously there's the illusionist, and then there's also two which is a little bit of a spoiler, but we should point that out there because depending on what's going on, there could be smugglers in this room, not in this room. They could be waiting to ambush people. All that just kind of depends on what you want to set up. So if you go in the back of the book, it shows you, the monsters, and each one of those, and they have different things on them and all that. So that's kind of like, it's all listed out there. So even though we're in room 21, on page 11, on the back of the book on page 27 is like kind of all the monster stats and all so you have to sort of think of those smugglers as like free floating people that could be in any of these rooms and in this whole next area. So depending on what's been going on.
Right, and there's a few named ones, but there's also a bunch of smugglers that are just like, this one is missing an eye, this one has a hook hand. Like, it just like generic, it doesn't name them, but it gives you a little bit of a description of what they look like. That way you could like actually feasibly have them walk around instead of being like, they all look like thieves, So yeah, it says it kind of describes this as a living quarters. There's a bunch of beds in here. There are there's a large ham on the wall, sausages, meat, a crude stove in here, and a fireplace. So it's like pretty obvious that there's people living here.
And then, so to give a little bit of an idea, spatially, there's a big table, there's all this stuff. And there are stairs. There's also 2 doors that you could see. And then there's also a secret door as well. Another secret door. Yeah,
so when you look towards the room to 23, it says, read the following. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says the door appears to be normal, but there's a wooden bar across it, and in brackets on the frame on the door itself, someone wrote the word danger.
Yeah. And then there's another door. So there's it's 2 doors next to each other. One goes into one room that's obviously like some kind of like quarters or something like that. And the other one is this other one. And the other one says like danger on it.
Which is like, of course, your D&D adventurers are going to go in there. Like, there's got to be some cool magic items in there. So room 22 is Sanbalet's private quarters. So Sanbalet is the illusionist that is causing all these issues.
Yeah, and so like it may be that in 21, maybe you've set it up so that like they're all, all of those, they're all waiting for you in there, and then they all attack at once, and then like you got a big battle. But it might not be, but he might be in his quarters, he might not be in his quarters. You sort of have to like decide what you want to do.
Yes. And as far as
normally he's like normally he's in one place, but he could be in these other places.
So there's like a lot of things going on in his room. There's a lot of description. But part of it in the actual like box text, it says under the table in the small wooden box, under the table is a small wooden box and a bullseye lantern with a movable shutter over the lens. The lantern is unlit. And that's going to become like something for later. He also notably has a bunch of books. Number 1 is a volume of erotic poetry that is fully illustrated.
Ooh.
There's a naval almanac, and then there's a learned volume concerning mesmerism and its effects. Inside this is a book of parchment carrying some simple words and a phrase in the common tongue and their equivalents in the Null language. So that's for his Knoll slaves, so that he can instruct them. The other thing to note in this room, there's a book on mesmerism and its effects. Mesmerism is named after a real life person named Franz Mesmer. So are we to assume there's also an equivalent Franz Mesmer in the world of Greyhawk?
Yes.
How did it get called mesmerism in Greyhawk, Kyle?
I don't care. No, that's a really
Plot
good
hole.
question. Yeah,
I found a
it's
plot
total
hole.
plot hole. You're right. That is a very big plot hole. Super concerned about that.
There's a secret cavity that has his spell book, which has some spells in it if you have a magic user in the group. He's got some potions that you can loot. One thing that I thought was funny about his so there's a box that has 5 glass vials in it that are 3 potions of healing, a potion of delusion, and a potion of speed. It is trapped to have a needle trap in it, but the needle just has a blue dye that spreads under your skin when it hits you, and it does nothing. So
Yeah,
it's just
I
to
love that.
like
I
make you
love that.
paranoid that you got poisoned. All right. So sometimes when we're reading these modules, I really like the names of rooms. Room number 23 is the skeleton's room.
Yeah. So this is the one with danger on it.
Yeah, so this is a room that essentially the smugglers opened it and they were like, screw this, and then they locked it, and then they wrote danger on it, and they decided to never go in that room.
Obviously, the PCs need to go into this room.
Yes, so this room, it's dark. There's nothing lit in here because the smugglers don't go in here. And it has 6 skeletons. And this was placed here by the alchemist that originally owned this house to guard his private laboratory. And it says they're a little sluggish to attack if you go in there, but they will eventually stir awake and attack you.
So you got to deal with them. And once you deal with them, you also need to be searching this room because there's a secret door.
There
that
is
then
a
goes
secret
into
door.
the laboratory because this is the secret laboratory that has a secret door. It's very secretive.
So in the actual laboratory, there's a bunch of magical laboratory stuff. But the cool thing in here is that the figure of this, there's a table against the south wall forming an L shape with the bench. In the chair before the table sits a human figure with its back to you, apparently studying a book which is open on the table. The figure wears a robe embroidered with a variety of mystic symbols and a pointed hat. So that figure is the skeleton of the alchemist who died during his work by a heart attack. So he was like reading a book and so his body is still there.
Well, he wasn't reading just any book.
Ye Secret of Ye Philosopher's Stone.
Which is a great book. You can't read it, but if you sell it somewhere other than Saltmarsh, it's 500 gold. And it tells you how to basically turn things into gold, of which he was successful. I love that that's the other part, too. He actually figured it out. He doesn't, you can't find the Philosopher's Stone, but he figured it out. And,
Yeah, so
there's a bunch of stuff there made of gold.
Yeah, so the loot in the room is a human skull made out of gold, an apple made out of gold, a rose made out of gold, and a set of 5 small discs, which are actually balance weights that are made out of gold.
And, of course, a fool's gold Philosopher's Stone that you think is a Philosopher's Stone, but it's not. It's a cursed object.
Yeah, so there's a cursed luck stone. And basically, like, it gives you a -1 to all your hit and damage rolls, and you can't get rid of it in a conventional manner. Like, if you try to throw it out the window, it just appears in your pocket again.
Yeah, get to do remove curse. And then there's also his spell book, which has been messed up. So it just has a 2nd level spell of Fool's Gold. Well, it has affect normal fires, super, find familiar, kind of useful. Message, useful. Fool's Gold, don't know what that spell does. And then animate dead, because then they got to make a beeline as to how he made skeletons.
Yeah, and to get rid of the stone, you do have to use a remove curse spell.
Yep.
And it will vanish forever, but other than that, you can't get rid of it, which might... I'm not really a fan of cursed items, but I can see it being like a very funny scene if someone tried to get rid of this, like, you know, throwing it out the window and like trying to crush it and like trying to, you know, whatever they do, they can't get rid of it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you definitely need that little fun cursed item, and it's not terrible, but it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, over a couple levels, -1's not going to make a huge effect, but it's still, you know, going to be the difference between hitting and missing a lot of times. Although this is not a very fighty module. It doesn't have to be. So you might not even run into that too much. So now we're going on to the passages and caverns underneath.
So there's a secret door in the main cellar, and if you find that, then you find out that there's even more caverns and stuff.
Yeah, so there's a natural cavern with green slime, which is always fun because that's the one that attaches to you. It turns you into green slime.
Yeah, and no physical attacks can hurt it, so you better have some fire and stuff.
Yeah, and resurrection is not possible
if you die.
If you become a green slime, but it can be scraped off rather quickly. It says so.
Yes.
Still, it can kill you rather fast.
26 is a natural cavern with nothing in it.
Yep. 27
is very interesting.
Yes. So
if you've been sort of sneaky this whole time, and the wizard doesn't know, or the illusionist doesn't know that you've been fooling around with stuff, this is where the illusionist is at.
Yes, and there's also some gnolls that his gnoll slaves, and it does mention that they're not like normal. He uses hypnotic influence to make them unquestionably obey him as their master.
Yes, that's where that other book came from.
So, yeah, his gnoll slaves are here. I just cut out a long passage of me looking that up in the current version of Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, but the whole thing with the gnolls here that are like that have been hypnotized to be his slaves or whatever, that has been completely removed from the new one. They're not in there.
Yeah, just slaves are always problematic with especially like you have children playing and all of that. So
yeah, and it's also like he's mind wiping them, which is like pretty bad too. I think that they are much more careful about including that inclusion of that sort of thing, and it's kind of like, does it really add to the adventure that he has these like slaves that he is influenced? Like, you could just replace that with bandits, and it's probably the same.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you sort of include them in the sense that, like, he's kind of a bad dude because he's enslaving people, so maybe you don't feel as bad killing him, like, because we were trying to find motivations as to why, like, you want to kill this guy. This, like, we find in 2025, like, moral conundrums that probably don't exist in 1981 for them, but, we're sort of trying to find, like, a reason to kill these guys. Outright. And like if he's enslaving intelligent creatures, that's pretty bad.
I do like the idea that it's like a monster race and he has notes to try to communicate with them. Like, that's an interesting thing to me. But like other than that, like just replacing this with something else. Like in the 5th edition version, it's like a hobgoblin and some bandits that they replace it with, which is like if
need to be enslaved.
If I ran this for someone and replaced that part of the module, they probably wouldn't notice.
Right.
It's really not that important to his character. You could make him seem bad in other ways that don't involve slavery.
But, I mean, this is the big fight. So the big fight is the illusionist, 2 smugglers, 2 gnolls, 5 things to fight. And, he has color spray, hypnotism, wall of fog, invisibility.
Yeah, so at the very least, he might be able to just go invisible and escape.
Which they sort of allude to as well. So I also want to point out there's a 1-page illustration by Stephen D. Sullivan, which is the illusionists and 2 gnolls and 2 of the player characters fighting against them. It's great because, I have no idea what that illusionist is casting. I think it's color spray at the woman character who's sort of like dodging it, and then are being hypnotized by it. I'm not sure which. And then the great one is the fighter is fighting a gnoll, and there's a gnoll on the ground biting his ankle, which is like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and the way that the spellcaster, which I'm assuming is Sanballat on the left, he just looks so funny. Like, he just looks like he's like he would have I don't know, like the way I could just imagine him laughing like Wario. Like, that's how he looks like
the evil. Yeah, for sure.
Like, that's
right.
That's the type of sound that he makes from his art. Also in this room, it talks about There are 5 small bolts of cloth, which are silk. So that's like the contraband that they are sneaking in. Or part of it anyways. It tells you later that it's silk. Or that's one of the things.
And he is checking the manifest of contraband received the previous night.
And then we don't need to talk about the passages.
Well, that's where the other smugglers are. So there's like 2 smugglers in one room. The contraband is in another room with the other 3 human smugglers. So there's like a total of, I think it's 8. So, depending on, like, if they've been sneaky and everyone's not trying to all farm, they're going to have to go into each one of these rooms. And then, like, if they're super noisy in 27, the ones in 28 and 29 are going to come running into the room. So, like, maybe you have it so that they're fighting, and then, like, they sort of, because you want an intelligent fight here. So maybe, like, those ones come later, and then the other ones come later. So that's a whole thing that you, as a DM, you can sort of figure out.
All right, so it does note here, should the party succeed in wiping out the smuggling ring, the town council will give you a reward of 500 gold points per surviving party member. And if you succeed in killing Sanballat or capturing him, you will that reward will be doubled.
Yes, and he does have an invisibility spell, so he could probably run away.
Yeah, like he has he can make it foggy, so he can just do like round 1 fog, round 2 invisible, run away. And that would be like pretty hard for level 1 characters to deal with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it actually is probably going to be pretty hard to kill him. So you can keep any treasure that you find, but you will not get full value for silk and brandy in Saltmarsh. You will be asked politely but firmly to pay a 25% excise duty on the value of any contraband, thus retaining only 75% for yourself.
Yes. And now your characters can argue with the council as to what was supposed to happen there.
Yeah, it does note that it says lawful characters should do this without hesitation. And you might be playing against your alignment if you're lawful and you don't agree to doing that.
And notably, none of the characters in the back, the pre-made characters, have alignments. So you get to assign whatever alignment you want to them when you play them. Or the players can.
And this concludes the first part of the adventure. It does note that you will need some weeks of rest before the second part of the adventure continues. All right, Kyle, so now we are on part 2, the Sea Ghost, the second part of this adventure.
Wherein the plot is unravel and thickens.
So that's what it says in the book.
That's actually in there, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the, I guess, logical, I do like that this is the logical leap of this adventure, but now that you have found out that it is smugglers in the haunted house, you get to deal with the actual ship coming in and the smugglers on the ship.
Yeah, and, we both have talked about this beforehand, and this is a really unique, to me, is a fairly unique way of doing this in these modules. Obviously, we've played in a lot of, adventures, and you sort of have the same setup, but in the actual text of this module, there's 4 pages of setup, which is pretty interesting and different.
Yeah, we don't really see that in the other modules that we have read. It kind of like goes through it, and because of that, we can't really walk through the beginning of this like we normally would. But because the author, repeatedly says this is a thinking adventure, they set this part up because this is like a type of adventure where no 2 parties probably approach this the same way.
So I guess we're going to talk about each of the paragraphs that he has. There's like a preamble, preparation, special notes about running. So
each breakdown. Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's, I think it's really good, especially for somebody who's never DM'd before. This is a really good set of things to go through, because it sort of says, hey, there's all these ways to approach this problem of basically the ship. Like, you want to take out the smugglers, so how are you going to do that? And he gives you a lot of exposition, a lot of text about, like, different ways that people can approach this and how the smugglers will deal with those approaches. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is a unique dungeon because, like, the dungeon is a ship, but it's also the ship is moving and you have to get to it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean,
Yeah, it's
but
really
both
unique.
of us have struggled, like how we're going to talk about this.
Yeah, it's really unique compared to the other stuff that we have covered, and I really enjoy that about it.
Yeah.
So it is also written. So in the preamble, there is a breakdown of what's going on, but there is also another note that says, like, note, if you are playing in this adventure, do not read further. So that happens again in this book because basically the authors say, hey, you can run the first part, the haunted house, and not the second part, or just the second part. Like, this is kind of like two mini adventures in one.
Right.
So if you skipped to the Sea Ghost, then you could, it acts like it's its own contained adventure.
And to me, you wouldn't want to skip the first part of the adventure. I think it's more like your characters messed up that adventure or something happened, and so you sort of have to run the Sea Ghost on its own with maybe new characters or maybe a bunch of new players or something. I don't know, because it's definitely the first part is worth it. Like that part's really good too. So it's interesting. It almost seems like, I mean, there is a good chance that you could have a TPK and you now have to have new characters running in the Sea Ghost. So
you got TPK'd by falling down some stairs.
Yeah.
So the preamble, so the first part is preamble. It tells us about like the setup, the adventure, and it's kind of, the part where it says like, hey, this is for a medium-sized party of 5 to 10 for 1 to 3 experience. But the setup for this adventure is the smugglers that are on the ship are going to be unaware of what happened to the haunted house. So the idea is that you are tasked by the council to deal with the smugglers as they come in, because they don't know that the house has been dealt with.
Right. And they're going to give you a reward and all that stuff. So there's an incentive to do this.
And it basically, the council tells you like, hey, logically based on how like they offloaded contraband recently, they're probably going to be back the next time the Dark of the Moon happens, which is like the next time there's a new moon, which is about 2 weeks.
Right.
And they also arrange for what is it? Is it like they arrange for 2 people to help you?
Yeah, they have 2 local people, part-time core or excise officers to patrol the rendezvous points, and so there's like a whole thing of them trying to figure out where the rendezvous points are. So there's people that are volunteering to do that, but you have 2 people that are going to help you actually do this part, because the idea is that like you don't know how to sail a ship, so you have 2 local people who are really officers, who are part of the I guess the people that defend the town, essentially, that are going to help you row the boat, essentially, and navigate water.
Yeah, and in the appendix, they're brothers. They're not really like fighters, but they can, I think they have some fighting ability, but the intent is not that you get 2 hirelings that board the ship with you, that they're just there to operate the ship. Yeah,
and they can defend themselves. Yeah, but yeah, they're not really, they're not going to take out the ship.
Yeah, they're like city guard types. They're not. All right, preparations. So the next part is preparations. It basically kind of just says like, hey, you should allow your players to be intelligent about this next part. One thing that I have some trouble with is it says experience points should be awarded to the player making any suggestion that's like using the light signal to get to the ship, which is great, but it's like it doesn't tell you how much experience or like what type of reward that is. Like, is it equivalent to, in current modern D&D, you'd be like, okay, well, that's equivalent to like beating a medium encounter. Like, how much experience are you supposed to give for that? Wish it would tell you.
Right. Yeah.
Because it also just says like the dungeon master must exercise considerable discretion in this. Too small a reward or none at all could inhibit creative thinking by the party, while overgenerous rewards quickly become self-defeating. It's like,
just give us a number, dude.
Yeah, which is which? I don't know. Vibes-based EXP, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, okay, their first level, if you give them 500 experience, that should be great. I don't know. Like, I don't remember, because I think a first level fighter is like 1,000 experience and you get to the next level, but like a magic user is like 4,000 experience. So, I guess, kind of guess with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's usually easiest in current D&D to just be like, this is how much experience you would give for a medium encounter, and then go that way. I don't know. Maybe there's some part of the DMG I haven't seen that gives you suggestions for this type of quest thing, but it would just be really nice if they told you, because they know how much experience it takes to level up. That's part of the rules, so that would be nice. So this also tells you more about the like small fishing boat that you get, and you get accompanied by 2 local volunteers that assist you, a corporal and a private, and I believe in the back of the book they are brothers.
Yeah.
But it's essentially it says like they will fight to defend themselves, but they're not going to do anything like stupid and suicidal, and they're mostly there for the boat.
It's sort of like we don't want to go through the rules of how to row a boat and do that. Just have 2 NPCs do that for you. But again, I know I might be harping on this, but I just wish he was a little bit more succinct in some of this. It's like there's a lot of sort of, it almost feels like he's beating around the bush and talking about, like, he wants to talk more about it and like be very verbose when he could be very succinct, and I think people would get it. But that's just my own bias, I guess. Yeah,
we also are. The thing about this podcast is we are reading this from 2025. So this type of adventure is not like too weird to us, but maybe this was really novel and weird in 1981.
Right.
I do.
And he's writing it for somebody who probably has never DM'd before too. So
yeah, I do enjoy in one of the paragraphs. It says he uses quotes around dungeon. So he talks about like the party. One thing the party might do is attempt to obtain plans for the ship beforehand. And it just says, where's the quote I want to read? Clever party members will seek beforehand to see plans and designs of typical seagoing vessels of this time and place in order to obtain some prior understanding of this type of, quote, dungeon, unquote. So I kind of enjoy that there's quotes around dungeon, because the authors understand that they are deconstructing the idea of a dungeon.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's like, what is a dungeon? Like, obviously we know a dungeon is you go to a thing and you open a door and you go through a building and you go through the dungeons. But a dungeon can also be a ship that moves.
Yep.
So it's like deconstructing the idea of a dungeon, and they're already doing this in 1981.
Yeah, which is cool. And it is, it's something to note for sure.
Because it's like one of those things when you say dungeon, you recognize like, oh, a dungeon. But like if I were to tell you the dungeon moves and it's a ship and everything inside the dungeon is not fixed because there's like living, breathing people that walk around, it's like one of the things I love about this era of D&D is it's not, at this point the game is not that old and they're already like deconstructing the ideas that they made.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to talk anything else about the preparations.
No, I'm good.
So special notes about running this adventure is the next section. It does refer to the lizard men for the first time if you're reading through this book front to back. It does point out also the plot is in the appendix. So if you go to the appendix, there is a section for the plot that it tells you the entire plot of the adventure. In this, that's in the appendix instead of at the front. Most of the time we see that at the front of the adventure in these modules we've been reading.
Yeah, and most of the first part of the special notes is like, people are smart. These are not dumb smugglers. Like, they will figure out, what's going on and not be completely dumb and just sit there and get killed. They're going to band together. They're going to fight. They're going to do stuff. So, play them smart.
And also as a note, I just have to say personally, I love lizard men. I don't know what it is about lizard men, but I just love humanoid lizard people in my D&D games. There's a couple things like in the original monster manual, the picture of the lizard men are really cool. Like, you're like, I want to play one of those. And then one of the supplements, I think it's the I forget which one it was. They have someone got resurrected or reincarnated, the druid spell reincarnate got reincarnated into a lizard man, so it's like a person who got reincarnated into a lizard man, and it's like, this is the coolest player character ever. So it mentions lizard men because it just basically says don't inform the players that the plot of this is that the smugglers are running arms to the lizard men,
right,
and not to inform the players of that. So they have to discover that through playing through the module. They could do that by there's a character later named Oceanus who is an aquatic elf, and that's basically how you find that information. But it also does state that you can maybe capture smugglers, bribe them, and threaten them, if you want to get that information.
Yeah.
Next part is the signaling system, which is a really unique part of this adventure. So previously in the last part in room 22 in Sambalit's private quarters, I think we skipped over this a little bit when we were talking, but I'm just going to read this part because it's important. So this is from room 22, which is the illusionist's room. There's a wooden box under a table that contains 3 flasks of oil, a tinderbox, etc. There's a piece of parchment. This has some curious marks on it, which represent the code used by the smugglers to signal to their colleagues out to sea. This is for a facsimile of this and an explanation. See the appendix. So there's a handout in the appendix that has this information.
Yeah, the actual signaling system.
Yes. So with the players, you can actually hand the handout to your players, and it has it kind of looks like Morse code. Isn't that?
And it's to note, like, I think the reason why we have a long paragraph about like the signaling system here is because you could be running this and not have the players may not have gotten that handout, so they would have to figure it out based on maybe observation of the ship for a certain period of time or something.
Yeah.
Or they would, I'm not sure exactly how they would figure it out, but that's up to them. But the idea is that, like, okay, you don't have that handout. You didn't fight the magic user or did go to his private quarters. And so now you got to figure out how this works.
Right. And it doesn't say like, hey, this is a signaling system that's used from the window in the second story. You have to figure that out from deduction, like, of both of those areas, because one, it talks about like, hey, if you look at the window, so you can tell like someone is putting a large object on the windowsill, and there's all these footprints, so like people are coming to this room all the time, and there's scratches, and then you also find this parchment, and you find the hooded lantern that has a cover on it. So like the players are supposed to deduce that there's some sort of like signaling system between the ghost, between the house and the I almost called it ghost dog, the sea ghost.
Ghost dog. You and your ghost dog.
So it talks about like how the actual signaling system works. So the arrangement is for someone aboard the ship to flash the first signal, which will take about 4 seconds, up to 3 times within a period of 1 minute. The shore party would reply with the second signal and would flash this twice, whereupon the third signal would be flashed once only from the ship, and the unloading operation would begin. So basically the ship gets within eyesight of the house, and then they use this like signal system to confirm it's okay for the ship to go to the house and unload the contraband. If there's no response, then the ship just leaves and comes back later. And this is important because it's like a really easy way to get the ship to approach, because it does state that like the boat that you are using is way slower than the Sea Ghost. So you can't just like chase it down. You have to figure it out somehow. And then we get to the next part, which is boarding the Sea Ghost. That is probably the most I want to say the biggest part of this adventure, because it could go any way. Like there's no specific way that this is going to happen, which is why there's so much talking about this part of the section, because I think the authors understand like the way that this is set up. There's no specific way to get there. They give you tools to do it. Like the most optimal way, obviously, is to figure out the signaling system, get the ship to come in, and they sneak on the ship. But players might not figure that out. You might not have the clues.
Right. And it's also like, and the easiest thing would be the signaling system is somebody from the town or a local who's basically signaling the ship, and you're getting onto the ship from there. So like, but he doesn't explicitly say any of those things, because he wants the players to like figure out a way.
Right. And it does say like it does give you some direction. Like the way that you approach the ship is very important, because if you approach it from the backside, that is it basically says like everyone is going to be focused on the house. So if you come to the backside, you're less likely to alert everyone on the ship.
Right.
It also does say that you could make a direct approach and try to bluff your way on the ship. Like you could pretend to be the party from the haunted house. You could say like you lost the lamp. There's also another section where there's a little bit of an issue here because it says like allow them a 65% or greater chance of being believed. So there's no like no skills. It's just, percentage chance because there's no way to facilitate that in the game yet.
Yeah. And then like, oh, you bluff that. And they're just like, hey, we're going to shoot arrows at you and then, drive the boat away. And it's like, oh, God damn it. And then maybe you try to do it again or, who knows what happens after that? Or maybe that's the end of the module. Like it could be very interesting how this goes.
Yeah, it just says that like the fishing boat is not as fast as the sea goes, so you cannot. If they start leaving, like you're probably not going to be able to catch them.
Right.
The next section is features of the smuggler ship. So this just talks about like the actual ship. This talks about what the actual ship looks like, so that you can kind of get acquainted to your players sneaking around. It also says because the ship is damp. While it's not super easy to catch the ship on fire, you can catch the ship on fire if you're not careful.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because there's so many, again, we have so many paragraphs about like how to light the ship on fire. Just like, okay, it's fine. There's like no rules for catching a ship on fire. So he has to create some rules.
Yeah, and my first question is how likely is Fireball to catch the ship on fire? Which is spells of the 3rd level and above, which involve the creation of fire, have a 25% chance per use of creating a blaze. The chances of extinguishing it remain the same for those for a normal fire. And it essentially says like, hey, you can sink the ship and catch it on fire, but you will lose all valuables on the ship, including the ship itself.
Yeah, and all the people on the ship too, which like the plot. There's a whole plot. So I think you're going to lose the plot as well by lighting the ship on fire.
You light it on fire, and yeah, you just you win. Fireball the ship and walk away.
And then but there's a whole lizard man plot that you're going to not be a part of.
Yeah, and it also talks about there's a bunch of text about like so yeah, there's this entire paragraph which like I don't know how useful it is, but it just talks about like the smugglers know how to like climb the rigging in the ship, and they don't really like need to. There's like just all this like rolling percentile die, and if you fall you take this much damage, which like I understand the realism of that, but I just don't know if it's really needed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where again we're reading it in 2025. We have different rules for this now. We sort of don't need you need like we just say, hey, a DC 15 acrobatics check or something. We don't try to sit there and come up with, well, these people know how to do it and these people don't, and the lizard men are really good at it and these other people are, so we'll give everyone a percentage chance, and everyone starts rolling percentages all over the place. And there's 2 paragraphs of it, whereas like, okay, well, is that what's important? I guess it's going back to like this old school, like we're trying to be realistic about these things because that's we don't have video games. We don't have these systems. So, we're going to try to be as realistic as possible. And it's like a mini game of chance that we want to add to the game. And we know now that in these role-playing games, you don't really need that. It's nice to have, but you don't really need it. So, it's just, one of those things that you see in these old school modules.
It's kind of interesting at this time. Like, obviously there's other media, but media teaches you how to look at other media and changes how you think of other media. At this time of D&D, we obviously see that like the big thing that is causing people to think about D&D in different ways is like fantasy novels and and to an extent certain movies, right? Now it would be video games. Like Pac-Man is not going to teach you things about D&D, but now you are going to learn things about D&D mechanics from things like video games. So the other thing about this too is to me, like it needs to fit in the universe of it. So if I was running this and, did an encounter and I was like, yeah, the smugglers start climbing in the rigging and shooting arrows at you or whatever, like like as a player, you're like, well, of course they could climb in the rigging. This is like what they do all day. They're
Right.
they're sailors. So I like it. Just I guess if it's the universe, I think these rules are if the players try to do it. But I another thing that I'm like not sure that's needed, and maybe this could have used an editor.
Yeah, it's hindsight, right? So hopefully, I'm sure they ran this, and then they sort of wanted to have this difficulty thing of running around on the ship. I agree with you. Like us looking at it now, it's sort of like, you could have used those 2 paragraphs for some much more interesting things. But it's just the way, it's the way that D&D at that time was made. And, I also like. It's interesting to think about that. The player's handbook is, at this time is fairly large, not too large. It's not too bad, but the DM's guide is huge, and there's lots of rules in there, but they don't cover these things. And you think about like how, like the DM's guide we have now and the DM's guide we had then. The DM's guide now is like probably a third the size of the DM's guide, and it's just interesting to think about like. You had so much space in that DM's guide, but it doesn't include rules like this. It doesn't include rules for like, hey, we're going to go onto a ship and do this thing. So someone had to write all new rules for characters for D&D. And, now we realize like all of that stuff was just like, why are you doing that? We just come up with a system that's a lot easier. But because we've had, 25, 30 years of game experience, of role-playing game experience, we now know like, well, it's easy just to like make something that's generalized for all of that. So it's always interesting to look at these rules and go like, what? And then it's like, oh, right. Like we didn't have that. But even though there's tons of rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide, they don't include these rules. It's almost like a thing of specialized rules. Like we have all these specialized rules for specialized scenarios, but we realize that you don't need that. You just need a general rule that covers all of those specialized rules. And that's where the game evolved to.
The next section is Surrender by the Smugglers, which is just talking about, hey, if you take out the captain, the mate, the magic user, if they're all dead or they're fled, and then the party outnumbers the rest of the smugglers, they will just surrender.
Right. They are smart people. They don't want to die to the end. It's not worth it, man.
Yeah, and they will also try to basically create... So essentially it says, like, if they surrender, they will try to exchange, like, create an exchange where they benefit. Usually, like, hey, if you give us each 100 gold or something, we'll talk about, like, where our secret cache is and what's going on. So it just basically says, like, hey, they're going to try to come up with terms that are good for them.
The smugglers, leaders, and lizardmen will not surrender or sell information, so they'll fight to the death. Although it's funny because he did say, like, oh yeah, so you do have to kill all the lizardmen. So, but if there's the leaders of the lizardmen are dead, that's the end, and the smugglers will be like, hey, we're good.
Yeah,
here's some stuff.
Give me gold, and I'll tell you what I know, and then I will go away and do something else with my bandit life.
And it does come now, like, what are the alignment of the characters and how do they think they're going to do that? Like, because they may want justice for the smugglers, but then we get back to that moral quandary of like, they were just trying to get rid of taxes, and
yeah, so... they're just smuggling silk. It's fine. Who cares?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that like, okay, we have to kill all these people because someone didn't want to pay their taxes. So.
Yeah, I definitely, if I was running this, I for sure would change what they're smuggling. I don't know what I would change it to. I'd have to think about that, but I don't think it would just be silk. Okay, so random encounters are next. You don't have anything else about the surrender, right?
No, I'm good.
So random encounters aboard the Sea Ghost is next, and this is pretty unique because normally random encounters are like, hey, you roll this and there are some giant spiders here, or there's some goblins here. This is different because the random encounters here are characters on the ship randomly moving about the ship, and it uses a random encounter table to facilitate the movement of these characters around the ship, which is an interesting use of a random encounter table.
Yeah, I kind of like it. And it totally makes sense. Like someone, this is a well thought out adventure in a lot of ways. I mean, I obviously complained about the verbosity and all of that stuff, but in the end, the verbosity also helps because he's really thought about a lot of what could happen here. And, it's cool. Like the magic mouth thing. And yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And it's about using the tools that you have for writing for the adventure, right? Because it's like, okay, well, I want a mechanic that will be the facsimile of a people wandering around a ship. How do I do that? Well, we have this mechanic called random encounters, so you could use that and just make the random encounter table the people walking around the ship. So like it's interesting. Like games kind of build upon themselves in a way. Like the more mechanics you come up with, the more tools you have to do things like this. So the random encounter table itself, there's only 3 things on here, and it does when it talks about smugglers in this section, it gives them numbers, because if you go to the back of the book, each smuggler has like a different entry. They all are like there's a couple named ones, but the ones that have numbers have like a small description of like what they look like and what they carry.
And they're all in different areas. So it's like, just smuggler one's here, smuggler one's there. And then with this random encounter, you're going to meet that smuggler, but not in the area that they're in normally.
Yeah, so it does. So the table, it says die. So there's 3 different things. It gives you the encounter, and then it gives you the normal area. So the encounter for number 1 is the mate and smuggler number 1. And it says the normal area is area 1. Because if they aren't encountered in the random encounter, that's where they are on the ship. So it does give the DM like that so that they can write it down and know that like the characters move, because it can be kind of confusing, right? This isn't a video game, it's like happening in the DM's mind. So yeah, it can help you figure out like where certain people are. If you're running this as a DM, you probably want to have like a sheet of paper that says like smuggler 1 through 7, and you can write like if they've been encountered or where they're at.
Yeah.
So you have encounter number 1 is the mate and smuggler number 1. Encounter 2 is bosun. Are you familiar?
Yeah, bosun.
Bosun. Okay. Number 2 is bosun, smuggler 2, and smuggler 3, and then the encounter number 3 is the magic user and lizard man 2, which is pretty funny. Like you could be walking around the ship, and then the first encounter is like a wizard and a lizard man, and you're like, why is there a lizard man here? What is going on?
Like, wait, what? Like, what am I doing? The other piece too, that kind of goes with this is that what he alludes to with all the smugglers and people is that, whatever's going on in the ship, like if there's a big fight and you're making a big noise, all of these people are going to start to run. They're going to start coming out of their areas to come fight, or maybe they're going to run, maybe they're going to hide. You sort of have to figure out what's going on. So you sort of, like if I were running this, I would also sort of, you said like have a sheet where everything's at, but also like, okay, know where they are on the map. So I might actually have the map of the ship, another copy of the map of the ship, and then sort of where they're at. And then as noise happens, it's like, oh, the bosun is in this area, or the magic user's in this area. Would the magic user move into that area because of what's going on at the top of the ship, or maybe in the middle of the ship, or whatever's going on?
And yeah, this, just reading this random encounter and this preamble, and like this makes me think of the modules that we've read thus far, the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh has the most variability of play, I think. Yeah. Meaning that like just looking at, something like Against the Giants. Like there's obviously like different ways you could go through that. Not every single party is going to go through in the same like room order, but like I would say there's not a high variability of play in that if I took 100 different groups that ran Against the Giants and I sat them down and I say, tell me step by step what you did in this adventure, it would be like pretty close. But if I did that with the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh with 100 different groups that ran it, it would be very far, their experiences would be very, very far apart.
Yeah, very different.
just like looking at this random encounter, I can see like just, you go on the ship, first random encounter is the magic user and Lizardman. Now there's Lizardmen on the ship,
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to actually talk about the ship and what's on the ship. Now, this isn't a normal dungeon, so we can't really go room by room. So we're going to kind of split it up by levels of the ship. So there's the top of the ship, so like the main deck, and then there's the hold in the bottom, and then the smugglers are kind of spread uniquely, like uniform throughout the ship, and depending on how you approach it, things might be different, but we're going to talk about each level of the ship instead of like area by area.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that. Basically, if you think it's going from like the top of the ship, at the very top in the crow's nest, there's a smuggler. And then as you go down, there's going to be the poop deck and the forecastle and then the main deck. And so all of those are open to the air. So like if you form an attack and all of a sudden you're attacking in that area, you're not silent, all those people could suddenly be involved in the fight. So basically it includes, on the main deck, there's one smuggler, and then on the poop deck, there's a smuggler, and then on the forecastle, there's a smuggler. So there's a total of 4 smugglers, and then there's the bosun, the magic user, Punkate, and the captain. So you basically have to, you have to deal with all of them if you make a bunch of noise. But if you don't, then you wouldn't necessarily have to deal with all of them. Or if you somehow infiltrated and went down into the hold deck, you wouldn't have to deal with them. And then the other thing I want to talk about with this is as you go down, when you're going down to the main deck, poop deck, all that stuff, and then you're on the main deck level, there's doors that go into each of the main deck levels, right? And so in the main deck levels on 7 are the lizardmen. So if you make a bunch of noise, and they're sleeping, so if you make a bunch of noise, the lizardmen may come out. So just keep that in mind. And then if you make even more noise, an alarm goes off on the hold level, wait, just one deck below that. In the hold level where they're storing all this gear and all that stuff, there's 4 smugglers and the bosun. So you may get the bosun to come out as well, and you may be fighting basically the entire ship on the main deck if you make a huge frontal assault. So, it kind of seems like you want to do something silently. You sort of want to fight them not all at once. You sort of want to go through each room if you can. So it's not like a normal dungeon where you're going to go, okay, well, I'm going to go to room 1 and then room 2. You may be fighting rooms 1, 2, and 3 and 17, which is the crow's nest,
yeah,
all at once, depending on how you decide to assault the ship. So, we want to talk about, we could talk about each one of the kind of sort of the people at this point, I guess, on the top level of the ship.
Right, and this is why the adventure says this is like a thinking adventure, because like if you just board the ship and you're like, I'm gonna try to kill everybody, then you probably just don't have enough resources in like attacks that you take per round and magic spells and HP for your party if you're levels 1 through 3. Like it's probably not going to work out for you. Like not only are you outnumbered, but you're in a disadvantageous position because there's like someone in the crow's nest, and there's a magic user, and some of them have magic weapons. Like for instance, the mate, who's named Bloody Bjorn, has a +1 bastard sword, for example, and he's a 3rd level fighter.
So also on the top deck there is Sigurd Snake Eyes, is a swashbuckler, which is a 5th level fighter, and he has a +1 longsword and a normal dagger. So he could actually be using the two-handed rules if you really want to get pedantic and fun with that. So I mean that's a 5th. You might be fighting a 5th level fighter, a 3rd level fighter, and a magic user. He's 3rd level magic user all at once, which would be pretty tough, along with 4 smugglers, one of which is probably shooting arrows from the top of the deck, just to start with. If you just round 1, so
round 1 fight. There's so many people. The other thing to note is, I guess I'm going to talk about all the people on the poop deck. So yeah, there's Sigurd Snake Eyes, but there's also the magic user whose name is Punketta. which to me sounds like a Pokemon name, but that's whatever.
Yeah, right.
And one of the smugglers also holds the bullseye lantern, which has the signaling shutter on it. So he's the one that messages back.
Yeah, and that's the one on the poop deck, which, the poop deck is basically the top part of the back of the ship. Usually that's where, like, the rudder is and all of that stuff to steer the ship as well. So we're now on, like, sort of the main deck level. And if you look on the main deck level, there's 3 other like rooms that have almost nothing in them. So we just sort of skip that. But I think the thing we want to talk about is the Lizardmen quarters.
Yeah, so the Lizardmen quarters, this is like the most unique part of it. So first of all, I just have to call out to, so this is on page 21. I just have to call out to there's art of a lizard folk on a hammock, just like hanging out. I love it. It's just, I don't know, the way that they draw lizard folk is just so interesting and funny to me.
Yeah, Joseph Quinn did that, and it looks really cool.
Yeah, I enjoy it. So there's a couple things that are unique about this. One, it talks about, so first of all, you're going to go in here, and it says the first thing that happens is you smell like, instead of smelling like human BO, you smell like swamp and marsh. So it smells like there's people in here, but they don't smell human, which is an interesting thing that I do enjoy. It also talks about how like this area is very small, so actually fighting in melee is quite hard because you don't have enough area to swing your swords, whereas like the lizard folk can just attack you with claws and teeth. So you're at like a disadvantage because of the room you're in, which is really interesting. Right.
I mean, it almost behooves you to, like, I don't know, bring him onto the main deck and fight him there. But, who knows what's been going on there. So, it's a very interesting encounter.
Yeah, it just
could be a very interesting encounter.
Yeah, it talks about, like, stabbing someone with a dagger is not a problem, but, like, swinging a battle axe is not going to work in this room. It's going to be very hard.
Yeah.
There is also a pseudo-dragon in here.
Which is great.
So it's the companion of Lizardman number 1.
I will honestly say I really wish Lizardman number 1 had a name. I think he should have come up with a Lizardman name, but that's just me.
True, or at least like a guide of what Lizardman names sound like, because I don't know. I have like in my head I have an idea of what Lizardman names sound like, but that's because I've had Lizardmen in my games and I've given them weird like really hard consonant names. Like I know in our game in the game I ran there's a lizard man. I think his name was Bracklesutchel or something like that. But like,
love it.
Like that's in my head. That's like what lizard man names sound like. But like, it'd be nice to know what his name is going to be. But interestingly enough, if lizard man number 1 is dead, there is a base 50% chance that the pseudo dragon will select one human/humanoid party member as its new companion. So you basically like kill his master and then he bonds with someone,
which is pretty cool. I mean, it's a long period. So in the module, this whole room is one whole page.
Yeah.
And I think it's deserving. So it is sort of fun that, there's all this stuff that could happen in this room and for this encounter that's pretty unique and interesting and fun.
Yeah. First of all, like maybe the authors know that people are going to want to befriend the pseudo dragon like immediately. But so you do roll like a 50% chance, and then, which honestly, like if I was running this, I would just make it 100%, but whatever.
Yeah.
So if you roll a 50% chance, it gives you an order of preference in which the pseudo dragon will bond to people. So it says like, so you roll the 50% chance. If you hit that, then the order is a druid, and then a ranger, and then any character of neutral good, and then any character neutral and not evil, and then any magic user that's good. So, like, you go in that order to figure out who it bonds with. You don't just roll per person.
Right, which is funny, because the druid could be chaotic evil, and you're like, oh, it's bonded to you.
Aren't druids required to be neutral? I thought they were
required to be you're right. Actually, okay, so I messed that up. They're required to be neutral. I forgot
Well, actually, that. Kyle, they're required to be true.
Well, actually.
So yeah, the pseudo dragon. So it says the room is 10 feet by 10 feet. And there's 3 lizard men in the room, so it's just like really packed. And it says to penalize melee weapon rolls severely. And it just says the lizard men will not attempt to use their weapons, they will use teeth and claws instead.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like this little fight in here.
Yeah, me too.
And again, as we said, like if you're making a bunch of noise enough to where, it wakes up the pseudo-dragon, well, the pseudo-dragon's already awake, so the pseudo-dragon might have already alerted the lizardmen to the whole fight, and the lizardmen all wake up, within a couple rounds or whatever, and come bounding out of the room and start fighting you on the main deck level, which could also be a totally crazy thing, right? Like you've done a pretty good job, maybe of taking out some of the smugglers, and maybe you kill the captain, and you're like, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden, like 3 lizardmen come out of this door, and you're like, oh god, what the hell?
Yeah, and it does give you rules for like the pseudo dragon waking up his companion. It says like it will communicate the warning rapidly in one segment, and it will appear as a dream to the lizardmen, because they can like the pseudo dragons could communicate like telepathically, so it will like alert them via a dream. Which like I'm glad my cat can't do that, because then I would just have a dream of like
food,
of like a person walking into my dream and being like, you need to wake up and feed me right now, I'm starving.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, as far as the notes on melee, it does say to severely restrict melee weapons. I would kind of go melee weapon by a melee weapon. Like, I think stabbing someone with a dagger, not going to be that hard, but swinging a, two-headed sword, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, you'd have to use it as like a piercing weapon. The next interesting room is Punketta's quarters, so the magic user. There is some interesting stuff in here. So it talks about some items in here that you could sell that are made out of silver.
Yeah, and just to give a little bit of like on the map, there's 2 rooms below the poop deck, and that's Punketta's quarters and the captain's cabins. There's nobody in there, but yeah, so we're talking about Punketta's quarters.
Yeah, so there's some silver stuff you could sell. There's Punketta's spell book, which has some first level spells and second level spells. There's this detail here that was pretty interesting. So it says on the last page of the spell book, there's a common word written in the common tongue, the word abracaphagic, which is the command word for his wand of detection, magic detection. I like Googled abracaphagic, and like that's not a word that exists anywhere, so I don't know why it's that.
I think he just made it up.
Yeah, obviously like abraca whatever means magic, but just that's a random word.
Yeah, and it also says that depending on what's going on, like normal circumstances, he's on the poop deck, but it could have been that like something happened and he's just studying there on his desk or something.
All right, next is the captain's cabin, which so the captain's cabin, it says various items of marine supply and on his desk, but there's also a letters containing several letters of personal and alarmingly intimate nature with 3 different ladies in 3 different ports, each of whom is under the common misapprehension that they are Miss Sigurd Snake Eyes. So he is a ladies' man. He has multiple wives in multiple ports. I love that detail.
Yep. And then, the other piece is that he has the incriminating evidence about the lizardmen and their involvement and how this all works.
Yeah, so there's a document with that's requesting further supply of like weapons and stuff, and then the signature there, instead of being like a common in the common tongue, is like a pictograph of a lizard with a forked tongue. So like
extended.
I think the hint being that the person signing it doesn't use common.
Right.
They use like a pictographic language, which I think is a really cool detail. And
yeah, that's good.
Seeing as how this module wants you to like think about what's happening in it, I love that detail.
Yeah.
There's also in the drawer in the chat in his desk, there is a key that unlocks the chains for a prisoner in room 14, which we will probably be talking about very soon.
Yep.
And there's also a chart that indicates like where he's meeting with the lizard men, which is 10 miles southwest of the town of Saltmarsh. So that's probably an important thing for the players to discover as well.
Yes.
So yeah, now we're going into the hold level, the 3rd, I guess, level down, or maybe 2nd, depending on how you think about it. So there's this crew quarters. So the first thing it says in the box text is various unpleasant odors of human occupation compete for recognition here.
Love it.
And then under the box text, there's like a little bit of a joke. Where is it? The curtained area contains 2 large tin buckets standing side by side on the floor. Both are empty, but they are stained and dirty and emit a foul smell. Perhaps this section should not be given any further explanation.
Yeah.
So the idea that's like their bed pots or their...
Yeah.
where they use the restroom.
Yep.
It's like kind of funny that detail is there, but he does make a joke of like, I'm not going to go any further into this. You know what this is for.
Yeah, you know what it's for. The body, everybody poops.
Oh, yeah. So in here, there's a chest that says, there's a book of addresses and names of ladies in various parts of the local area. A number of these have brief comments concerning the merits of the ladies in question. So these smugglers really take a lot of opportunities to objectify women multiple times. I will say these are very horny smugglers because we've encountered
some horny smugglers.
We've encountered this. We've encountered erotic poetry. We've encountered multiple wives at this point. These smugglers are need some companionship, I guess.
They definitely do. They've been on the ship too long.
All right. And then we also get into the cargo hold, which there are 90 bolts of silk here. So this is where the actual contraband is located, and we probably just need to talk a little bit about how boring the contraband is.
Yeah. Oh, there's some wine. I mean, okay.
Yeah, so it's wine and silk. So I got to this
soaps.
and I was like, really? That's what this is? Like, I get that it's illegal, but like, I just would change this to something more interesting. I don't know what it would be. I'd have to think about it. I probably would want to read the next 2 modules to determine what I should change it to. But like, I just like the reveal of this, like, oh, it's silk, like I don't know if I love it.
I mean, it's 15,000 gold, which, that's a lot, I guess. I don't know. It's a little weird. And yeah, like I said, you would have 4 smugglers in here and the bosun if you play by the normal things, if they haven't been alerted or, you suddenly discover them or however that works. So normally that's what would be in here or who would be in here. But yeah, silk. Really? Okay.
Yeah, can it be magical drug silk? Why does it have to be silk?
Right? Like, I need magical drug silk. Don't we all need that in our lives?
The bosun's cabin has a interesting thing. The last line of the box text is, "This cabin appears to be unoccupied, except for the parrot."
There's a parrot.
Yeah, so of course he's a pirate sailor. He has to have a parrot. So it says, when anyone enters the cabin, the parrot will immediately wake up, squawk, and say, "Pieces of 8, pieces of 8." He will squawk again and then go back to sleep. Its cries will in no way alert or alarm the smugglers. They are accustomed to it and most regards it as a nuisance. So you could have some like really interesting tension here if they're sneaking around and they walk in the room and the parrot immediately starts talking to them.
And there is a secret door, which is 14, which is where the prisoner is at, which is really important.
Yes.
And he gives a bunch of rules, like if you basically make a lot of noise or make enough noise in a certain way. I think it's a little bit weird to me that there's a lot of rules for whether or not the prisoner says anything based upon what is going, like what's being said in the room. So, because I kind of think, well, maybe we should just have them do it anyway, because it's sort of like you really want them to find this prisoner. So
yeah, I think
anyway,
the idea
thing
is that in the universe, the prisoner is used to people coming and going. But if he were to hear, basically, it gives a list that I'm just going to read through really quick. So the prisoner is an aquatic sea elf. So these are the things that will cause him to cry out to people and alert them that he's in a hidden room. It says, generally, if he hears matters which are consistent with his neutral good alignment, if he hears an elven voice, which I guess elves all sound the same. Okay.
Yeah.
The elven tongue, clear indication the party is anxious to put a stop to the smuggler's activities. Anything contrary to the basic precepts of his neutral good alignment. Anything apparently hostile to the elven race or to non-humans in general. So basically, he's probably going to yell at you.
Yeah. Talk of murder, other violent brutality, and anything apparently hostile to aquatic creatures, I guess he won't respond to.
Yeah. So I guess if you're in the room and you're like, man, you know what, guys? I really hate dolphins. Like, I just hate them. He's going to cry out to you.
Like, what? Okay.
You know what? I also hate jellyfish. Oh, gross.
Yeah, jellyfish. The worst.
I mean, I guess it's kind of funny. Maybe there's some party that did that, but and he also only speaks and understands the Elvish tongue.
Yeah, he only speaks Elvish.
Which, like, I guess at this point you have like comprehend languages and stuff. You might not have it level 1 through 3, but this is another instance where like I guess it might be interesting if they find this elvish prisoner and like they can't communicate to him and they have to do it in a non-standard way, and then like maybe they figure out the adventure and then go back to Saltmarsh and find someone that can translate for them. That might be interesting. But like you definitely want this character to be with them. He's one of the more interesting parts of the adventure.
Yeah, for sure.
So there is also a mate's cabin, which is not really, doesn't have too much stuff in it. There's some stuff you could loot for gold. There's 2 books in there. So there's the Principles of Navigation by Da Korma and the Legal Distinctions in Letters of Marque by Tazer, which I'm not familiar with these names. I couldn't really find any information about them, so I guess they might just be random names. There's also a secret door in the mate's cabin. This is where the weapons for the Lizardmen and all of the other contraband for them is located. So you can find that in here as well.
No, you're talking about the secret prison
Yeah.
cell.
So next is the secret prison cell. This is where the aquatic sea elf prisoner that we talked about previously is held. His name is Oceanus.
And the picture in the book of him, this is my favorite picture probably in the whole book. I don't know, it's just really good, well done, light and dark. It's just, I really love it. It's my favorite.
Yeah, and it does, the thing I like about it is I call these, the name I'm going to come up with right now for this is like, I call them WTF images. And what I mean by that is the first thing I do when I look at a module is I flip through it and I look at the art. And sometimes you see a picture of something without any context and you're like, what is that?
Yeah.
And for this, you're
exactly.
like looking through and there's all these boats of smugglers and then you see like a fairy elf thing. And you're like, what? I can't wait to figure out what that is. So that was my WTF image of the module when I was flipping through this.
Yeah.
So his name is Oceanus. He's a member of the tribe of Manon. I tried to look up the meaning of Manon. It obviously has something to do with water. And the reason I am saying that is because the planet in Knights of the Old Republic that is all ocean is called Manon.
Oh, okay.
Because, in Star Wars, you're only allowed to have one biome for your entire planet. So that's the ocean planet in Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay.
I don't know why. Maybe it's a coincidence, but maybe Manon is some sort of... So yeah, I don't know. The word Manon probably has something to do with water, but I couldn't figure it out. But yeah, there's an ocean planet in Knights of the Old Republic called Manon with the same spelling. So essentially, what is Oceanus doing here?
So Oceanus is here because the sea elves have seen the ship going back and forth and they've become very suspicious of it. So Oceanus has been tasked to find out what's going on with the ship. And unfortunately, he was following them and he's like, oh, well, they're going over here, they're doing this. And unfortunately decided to board them and try to figure out what's going on. And he was captured and now is, in the back of the secret hold. And he doesn't know anything about the Lizardmen or anything, but he knows that they've been up to no good.
Yes, and interestingly enough, when you're reading this, you're like, well, this is early D&D. Of course, Oceanus betrays the party. But the opposite of that, Oceanus actually will assist the party. And not only that, he will assist them in the next 2 modules as well.
Yeah, he could actually become a player character. So, this is a early... what do we want to say? Where, a character in the module, a character in your game now becomes an actual character, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it says basically if he becomes a recurring character that you play in U2 and U3, the next 2 modules, it basically says like, hey, you should probably task one of the players to run Oceanus for the rest of the adventure.
Yeah, be totally fun.
And it says he expects a normal proportion of the treasure, but he will help you in the next 2 adventures. And maybe having an aquatic elf is very useful in the next 2 adventures. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's also really cool because he gets excited about you guys being adventurers. So then he wants to adventure with you. So that's sort of the deal. Like, oh, I have a thirst for adventuring now. I don't want to be just an aquatic elf anymore. I want to be an adventurer.
Yeah. So it says he will join the party with enthusiasm and will stay with them throughout their remaining adventures, only then and reluctantly leaving to return home, for he has been fired with the spirit of adventure.
Yeah, I love it.
So he just has wanderlust that he wants to join you, which is like a nice change. Like I love running into NPCs like that. Also, he's an aquatic elf, so it would kind of be fun to have a stranger in a strange land sort of NPC. We've all seen Little Mermaid. Probably similar to that. That's how I would roleplay it anyways. So I think he would be a very fun character to roleplay. It'd probably be like a nice part of addition to the party. And, like I was saying earlier, if you can't speak with him in Elvish and you can't do it with magic either, you probably, as a DM, I would make it very clear that he was your ally. And then you could maybe fighting someone in Saltmarsh that speaks Elvish is, probably not going to be a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
But if he's going to join you on the next adventures, if he can't talk, that might be kind of annoying. So, if you allow him to speak Broken Common, it's probably not going to be too bad, too breaking to the adventure. So the next room, it talks about just all of the stuff it's the secret room from the maid's cabin that has all of the weapons that are being delivered to the lizard men. None of them are magic or anything. It's just a bunch of different melee weapons and some javelins.
Yeah, I mean, the most important one is there's 4 small shields that emblazon with the design of a lizard. So if you haven't figured out that they're basically smuggling silk in, making money, buying arms, taking those arms and then selling them to the lizard men, that's sort of the deal. So if you haven't really figured all that's going on, 4 of the small shields have lizard men designs on them.
Yeah, which is
they're for the lizard men.
The author is aware of the variability of this module and realizes you might not run it. The more hints for lizard folk that he puts in, that the authors put in here, the better, right?
Yeah, right. And then there's the crow's nest, which is kind of weird that wasn't one of the first things that's on there, but it's okay. It's you do have to remember that there is a smuggler who was in the crow's nest at the top.
Yeah.
So maybe if you snuck around and killed everything or whatever, and somehow the guy in the crow's nest never figured it out, you got to climb up the crow's nest and take care of him. Or he just surrenders because probably you've killed the captain, all the lizardmen, and all the other people. So he probably just goes yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, it is weird that it's number 17, and it should be one of the first things that you run into, but I guess, there's no way you could run this adventure without... This is not an adventure that you could just pick up and be oh, I guess we're going to play Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, and just, read through it and do it on the spot. You have to read the whole thing and understand everything that's happening, so it's, not that bad, but it is kind of weird that it's mentioned last, but it's, one of the first things you see.
Yeah. Or it could be. Anyway.
Yeah, current adventures tend to number rooms in a linear fashion based on how you see them or how you might run into them, where these old modules, not necessarily the same. This isn't that egregious. Yeah. It was definitely worse than other ones we've read, but just kind of interesting.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's just funny that it is, the very last thing, and it could be... There's a lot of rules about how to scale it and get into it and all of that stuff. And, there's a guy shooting arrows down at you. So kind of depends on what's going on, what's happened with the rest of the ship too. So
it says, now we go to the conclusion. Basically, if you go through that, there's 3 different things that it says. So it says you should have, if you completed the mission, the seagoing side of the smuggling operation will be inoperative now. And you will have gained the following information. In addition to smuggling contraband of the more conventional sort, the smugglers were also running weapons to the lizard men. It should tell you the location of the lizard men's colony and the fact that the smuggled weapons appear to have been going on for months. And this leads directly into U2, the adventure module, not the band. Danger at Dunwater.
Yes, and also I like that they doesn't really say smuggling the contraband. The contraband is silk.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah, make it, I don't know, make it I would probably change it to reagents or something. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. But yeah, the next adventure is Danger at Dunwater, and this goes directly into it. And it says, remember, this is a thinking players module. Neither the smugglers at the haunted house nor their colleagues aboard the Sea Ghost should present a serious challenge to a well-organized, intelligent party. So, yeah, you should... basically what it's saying is, this module is actually pretty easy if your players think through it and don't try to smash everything with their swords.
Yeah. We encourage them to do some creative thinking. And really the rest of the module, there's an appendix which goes about the plot, and then there's descriptions of all the humans and monsters. So we were talking about the number 5 smuggler, that's who's in here. Also the captain, the mate, the bosun, all that stuff is in here. The pseudo dragon even has stats in here and stuff. And then there's credits. So that's the end. So one thing I do want to point out, since we're going through the end of the module, one of the other really, really good, my second favorite art is a full page on page 30. That is, the four of the adventurers sneaking up on the house. It's completely dark. You can tell that, there's just like a moonlight. It's a really good one too. I don't see the author for this one, but I really, really also really like the use of light and dark in this. And you really get the idea that, it's four people sneaking through the dark, trying to figure out what's going on with this haunted house. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I do like there's an NPC, there's a PC here. I'm presuming it's supposed to be a player character. There's like a dwarf gnome guy that looks kind of like a swashbuckler, and I just love that character.
That's great. Like who is that?
And it's also at a like a Dutch angle, so it's like a weird like under angle that makes the angle makes the haunted house seem way more sinister.
It's really well done.
Yeah, that's some cool art for sure. All right, Kyle. Now that we're at the end of this, what do we think about what do you think about the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh?
It's great.
Yeah, this is a great adventure.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a really well done adventure. It's really thought out. I mean, obviously we have our little gripes and things like that, but in terms of these early modules, it's one that I wish someone would have said, "Hey, you really should have this one as your starting adventure."
Yeah,
it really gives you an idea of what D&D, how D&D could be played, rather than just going into a dungeon and killing a bunch of stuff. You have, there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of thinking. There's a lot of like, how are we going to accomplish this? People coming together and really starting to think about like, how are we going to do all this? It's great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's thus far my favorite intro to D&D that we've read on this podcast thus far. Like, I really like that it really rewards the players for thinking, and it would be a good way to introduce the game of like, hey, this isn't like a normal board game. This is a game where you can think and be intelligent and think about the world and how, your players are introduced to. It's like there's cogs in the machine and they work in this certain way, and the players, like, if you can see the cogs and see how the machines work, then you can like plan what you're doing, and it makes it feel like you're part of a living, breathing world that you're being inserted into. And I love that about this module.
Yeah, it's really well done. I definitely would have run this if I would have known that this was what it was. And people talked about it before, but no one really said like, "Oh, this is a really great one."
Right, and this was one of my picks. One of the reasons that I wanted to pick it is because I've heard repeatedly that it's really good, and I didn't really know. The only thing I knew about it is that Ghost of Saltmarsh. It's in that anthology for 5th edition, but I didn't really know anything about it. Like, I didn't know that it's actually smugglers. Like, I wanted to read it because it's a module I see. Like, oftentimes when I see like listicles that are like the top 10 D&D modules, like I see this one on there a lot.
Yeah, and it makes sense that it is.
And it's a really, really good introduction from, like, it's interesting to see what the TSR UK was doing, because there's like a lot of different ideas in here that aren't what the people in the USA TSR were doing. So it's like interesting to see how different groups of people were thinking about D&D differently.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that was the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. For our next adventure module, we're actually going to change things up a bit. We are going to be doing the recently released 5th edition anthology adventure Dragon Delves. And that's going to be a little different. Like, we do a lot of adventure walkthroughs and like talk about how, old adventures, like the design, and we talk about how like that is, has changed D&D on in the future, but we can't really do that with an adventure that just came out for D&D 5th edition.
No, it'd be less critiquing and more reviewing.
Yes. So this is going to be a kind of a product review, maybe. We're going to see more once we get through it, once I start doing the editing. But it's going to be a little different. We want to do, the plan for this podcast has always been to do different types of adventures. Thus far, we've only done like old D&D modules. Like, we will eventually be doing like, a D&D 2nd edition. We'll probably be doing 3rd edition at some point. But we'll probably be looking at the 5th edition adventures as they come out, just to kind of take a dip into them and see what they're like.
Yeah. It also breaks it up for us.
Yeah, breaks it up, makes it a little bit different for us as well. All right, well, that was The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh from Dave J. Browne and Don Turnbull. Join us next session where we talk about Dragon Delves. Make sure to follow us on your podcast app of choice and follow us on Blue Sky at adventuresgonemad.bsky.social. Are you enjoying Adventures Gone Mad? If so, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Did you play The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh? We want to hear about it. Contact us at adventuresgonemad@gmail.com and join us next time for Dragon Delves.
Okay, so restart that.
Oh, yeah, I can cut that. It's fine.
The protagonist is people. And I mentioned that just because, it's not monsters. It's not a dragon. It's just people.
You mean the antagonist is people. You said protagonist.
That I lost my train of thought on that.
Do you need a moment? It's okay. Oh, yeah, we just were like, yeah, there's nothing going on here. And it's like the fucking main room of the adventure. Oops.
Right.
He was reading Ye Secret of Ye Philophos...
I think that's the... God damn it, we've been doing this podcast too long, and now my brain is dead.
I know. As soon as we reach hour 2, my brain fucking quits.
Yeah, it's like, what? Anyway, of...
Preamble.
Exposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so start.
All right, so I don't have to do the intro because this is part 2. Oh my god, there's like... There's like a child throwing a fit. I wonder if that's coming through. What is happening?
Well, I obviously don't hear it, but... I love that we're just about to start and a child throws a fit.
Yeah, there's like someone outside and their kid is just like losing it. I just heard your phone, you monster.
Fuck. Well, I'm glad we weren't talking during it.
I'm still gonna razz you in the...
Yeah, you better razz me. I'm an idiot. Like, I can't seem to ever remember anything anymore. I'm old now.
You're a monster, Kyle.
I am a monster.
Okay, so